All right.
All right. I'll just make it public. 1 second. Where the fuck is it?
We start. Can I rant?
Yeah, stream's public now. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Moomy can go fuck himself.
Yeah. So
Let him cook.
This is my rant. Why my anime list is trash, and your last stream, made me remember that. Is the reason I stopped using my anime list is I watched Spice and Wolf. And I went to go look for Spice and Wolf. You can't fucking type Spice and Wolf into my anime list. Maybe you can now. Maybe they fixed it. But at the time, it was like you had to type Okami Toshinoku or whatever the fuck it is in Japanese. And I was just so mad that an English language website would make that executive decision that I just immediately typed in mal alternatives and made a Kitsu account and never looked back.
Yeah, this is what kind of I use AniList, because AniList actually has an interesting function where you can change what even the display titles are. So you can pick just like the English translation title. You can have like the Japanese title written out in English, or you can just have it written out in Japanese, and that's pretty nice. That's pretty interesting. Anyway, stream is live. Tweet this fucking shit out. God. Let me see here.
Feed at everybody.
You got an intro or you got fart noises?
I got I need to remember how to link to a stream. Where the fuck is it?
Yeah, I should tweet.
I
wish it would tell you how
Egg
many
is
people
first again. Egg wins.
And now.
Okay, cool. And then I'll just tweet this out real quick.
Wish it told you how many people have push notifications on for you on YouTube. Hi, everybody.
Hi. I'm Boomy. Welcome to the Weeb Crew. We're back. At it again. I don't know why I'm doing an intro as if we've ever done an intro on stream. We're a bunch of fucking hacks. Welcome to your weekly parasocial catch up.
Yeah, but this time with more clear and sweet. Let's go.
Richard, do you have a Twitter?
More clarity.
Richard,
yeah.
What's your Twitter at? Is it?
It's at study underscore underscore swords.
Just like us.
I'm going to tweet it out too for the.
There we go. Okay.
218 followers.
Come on, Richard. Richard, you're underselling yourself. These people don't know about Richard. Richard actually does good analysis.
Let me see here.
Everybody go sub the study of swords.
Go post all. I did it. I successfully made a tweet. How's the audio, by the way, real quick? What do we sound like? Do we sound good? Do we sound bad? The Veeb.
The Veeb.
I asked Moomy to make a The Crew logo last time. He hasn't gotten around to it. Audio sounds good. What were you saying, Moomy?
That'll have to be next time.
It'll have to be next time. It's fine. So as you've probably guessed by the title, we're here today to react to a rather contentious video from a rather controversial YouTuber, James Somerton's technically not publicly released Utena video. This was a Patreon exclusive that was eventually going to go up onto his main channel, which no longer exists now. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, yeah, that sounds like fair game to me since his Patreon is gone. Wait, why the fuck is like my bit rate? God fucking damn it. I'm not like dropping frames, am I? No.
Oh, the stream is like loading now.
Oh, god damn it. Hold on.
Are we gonna get copyright claimed on this? Am I gonna be
I
an
don't
accomplice
know
to
how
some?
like this works on it. Like, yeah,
Are we plagiarizing his thing? Is this transformative fair use?
I think,
Who's a
well, I mean,
copyright lawyer here?
this is like commentary, you know, we're like providing criticism and review of his video. So technically I think that constitutes fair use. And I mean, I had my reservations initially about reacting to it because I don't want to be like, oh, well, you know, let's just fucking show this guy's whole Patreon exclusive video on stream.
Right.
But now that this Patreon video doesn't exist, now that this channel doesn't exist, now that H Bomber guy has effectively like nuked him from orbit,
We can beat this dead horse, is what you're saying?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Well, it's interesting too because Kai and Richard, you guys can probably speak to this a little bit better than I could, but this video was like doing the rounds within like the Utena fandom on Twitter, like around the same time or before the H Bomber guys put out his own video.
That is correct.
That the case?
Yes.
Which I guess is interesting, like how those things just sort of ended up aligning essentially.
Isn't it funny, the morality of it, right? Like, like it's still his Patreon exclusive content, but like known plagiarist, right? Or accusations of plagiarism hit, and then suddenly, oh, it's fair game to kind of steal the content of the bad guy. You know,
Yeah.
not that I'm defending Somerton in any way, shape, or form, but I saw it shared around. I saw this before you guys even asked me to talk about this. I had watched this video because I'm just in the Utena fandom on Twitter.
Yeah,
and found a link to it.
Yeah, it was already doing the rounds just because the video itself had been uploaded as like an unlisted YouTube video, so it was very easy to just like share a link to it. And there are some interesting claims in the video that has certainly drawn the attention of various people. I remember, so during like the last stream, Richard, you were actually like going through and just kind of like seeing like, okay, well, what about this video was plagiarized? And then Kai, you later also checked this as well. And so from what I understand, most of the plagiarism in this is he basically, oh no, why does it say the stream is loading? Oh, good lord. Am I dropping frames? I didn't say I'm dropping frames, but I guess let me know if anything fucking goes wrong with this. Jesus Christ. But
I can see a little guy like changing color.
Okay, well that's good. What was I saying? I now lost my train of thought.
If you can hear us.
Oh right. So what was the plagiarism aspect of this video is mostly relegated to like him synopsizing the like development of Utena, and from what I understand, it's just mostly lifted from like the Utena wiki, and he just changed some words around essentially.
Yeah, I can go into what I did, and maybe Richard, if you want to share what you saw as well. So
sure.
First, I watched the video, right, and before I had watched H Bomber guy's video, you know, accusing him of the plagiarism and everything. And I just watched the video and I was like, okay, that's a pretty like C- take on Utena. I've heard a lot of this before. This is whatever, you know, fine. Didn't ring any immediate plagiarism bells, you know, having watched a lot of content about Utena and, you know, made my own content about it, that like there wasn't anything in there that I hadn't heard before. And I was like, okay, whatever. That's, you know, a little incoherent arguments. We'll get to that, I'm sure. But yeah, and then I went back after I learned of the plagiarism accusations and watched H Bomber guy like go through other videos, and all he said he had to do was just like take a sentence out and just put it into Google, and then it would pop up whoever he was plagiarizing. So I did that, and I did that again I got an AI transcript of it all and put it up in a Google Doc. None of it matched any type of written content. So maybe there's a video content that he's plagiarizing. I haven't seen every Utena video, but I didn't find anything that was directly plagiarized. It seemed to me like either he or his writer used the wiki page to just, you know, write a summary of Utena and then give their takes on it.
Yeah, and I mean, my findings are effectively the same. As you said, I had watched I think it was actually, I had started watching the H Bomber video, was I think about halfway through the Somerton section when you guys started your stream, and somehow or other through Twitter, I found a link to, at the time, the then unlisted Patreon Utena video. So I was like, why wouldn't I watch this? They're talking about it. So I'm like, hey, I'll just start from the beginning, see what he says. And then gets into it. I'm like, okay, here. I'm just gonna open up the wiki just for no reason, and just literally I can see like as I'm reading through the wiki, I'm like, that's exactly what he said, except he a little bit of flair on the language in terms of the way that he'd write it.
Yeah. It's literally like, can I copy your homework? Yeah, sure. Just change some words so the teacher won't notice.
The section, the section that I got to was the awards and acclaim for Utena, and then there's one thing that I thought was really funny. Like he copied that section almost like word for word, which whatever. I'm not mad at somebody reading Wikipedia to me. Like in the H Bomber Guy video, he makes the same type of sentiment, or like okay, you can listen to this guy read Wikipedia to you. But he misquoted something. Like
he did. He absolutely did.
He said it placed 19th on the NHK 100's Greatest Anime commemoration, and it placed 30th. I was like,
yeah,
what?
Oh, and he said it brought NHK was the station that broadcast Utena.
Actually incorrect.
It was TV Tokyo. What are you talking? He's like, oh, he confused the award ceremony channel for the one that broadcast Utena. This is the channel behind Utena. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, there were some other factual inaccuracies that I pointed out too.
And I guess you can't check the video description anymore. Yeah. I guess we can't check the video description anymore. Thank you. To see that he probably didn't cite any sources. If I remember correctly, when the video was still up, I did go to the description. It was just like he just had like parts listed, like different sections of the video essentially, and that was it. So yeah, no sources cited. Which again is going to make kind of like call into question of like when he starts making his own quote unquote analysis, is he pulling it up from like other places? Probably not. From what I understand, he makes some pretty outlandish claims. I saw a clip on Twitter about like saying like Anthe was a bottom or something, and a lot of people were like, don't do that. That's not.
He was really trying to.
Which I feel like if someone had made a claim like that about Utena prior, and it had like enough like notoriety to it that it somehow ends up on James Somerton's desk and he starts plagiarizing it, he will probably already know that take and be familiar with it, and be like, oh, he's actually taking this insane take from this other thing. But I guess that doesn't seem to be the case. This is, again, we can't know for sure because he cites no sources, but that would seem to indicate that this is coming from his own brain.
Right, or at least that joke, right, is so unique that it would be a fingerprint that would immediately take us to somewhere. It would click in somebody's mind. But
you just type in, is Anthe a bottom? And Google's like, you're not allowed to Google that.
All I saw when I was going through the transcription, my note on that exact line, that joke that he tried to force in there is ow, 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 cringe, ow.
Appropriate.
Yeah, it was bad.
So I guess before we get into the video itself, because we will be going through it and I guess reacting to it, giving our thoughts on it as we're going through it, we should say, and this is not something he says in the video, spoilers for Utena. I have not seen it, but I guess I've been spoiled enough on it as is. But if you have not seen Utena and you don't want to be spoiled on it, this is, I guess, your big warning to not watch the stream any further, because the video itself and probably the things we'll end up talking about will spoil Utena in some way or another.
Most definitely.
So yeah, and yeah, it's funny too. Also on this panel, I am the only one who has not seen Utena, so this will make I'll be the odd man out, and most of the discussion probably won't be coming from me.
This man. And he also like literally describes everything in the ending, like word for word, scene for scene. Shout outs to Lex Dorius in the chat. I saw the movie and not the show, so I understand it.
I understand it. I mean, I guess before I get into it, I've probably talked about this in like one of the podcasts or streams prior, but my first exposure to Evangelion was the final scene of the end of Evangelion.
Hell
And I was
yeah.
like,
Nice.
damn, this shit's crazy. I should watch the rest of the show and the movie in order to understand what this scene means. I watch all the show, the movie, get to that scene, and I'm like, I'm even more fucking confused now. God damn it.
Siano should make a director's cut where it starts with that scene. And it's just like Shinji's like, does a record scratch? How did I get here?
Baba O'Reilly starts playing. How far in are we? We're not even that in yet. We're still in hell. And why are we in hell? Because this is a video about a gay show. And as we all know, homosexuality
Oh my God.
is a sin.
Hey.
Let's let me turn off the let's get out of hell and get into the video. All right.
Out of the frying pan into the fire.
Shout out to Sailor Moon.
Thank you, patrons. Aw, isn't that sweet? His Patreon no longer exists now.
Did he take down the Patreon too?
Everything is gone.
Everything's gone.
Are we
Scorched
ever
earth.
truly out of hell? No.
No.
Yeah, I guess we'll if people can see the video, let's get into it. Let's see how this baby starts. Let me also just move this over here, make sure we have audio. Health warning. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, that's really loud. Okay, nope, I'm not seeing any audio on the stream, so give me 1 second while I fix this.
I heard it, but
well, that's because you're in like my Discord stream and not the
Oh, that's right. I just like to. This is one of the things that's incredibly grating about this video, and I'm, I got in a discussion with someone else in, I think, in the Justice server, but I guess the goal isn't necessarily to like the dunk on, at least for me anyways, is to dunk on this video, because as you say, I very much in agreement with Clear and Sweeter, with Kai's opinion. It is just kind of like a middling, not a particularly salacious or even like, it's not like incredibly outlandish takes and like some cringe jokes and things, but on the whole, it's been done before and much better. So this isn't like a catastrophe of a video.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that we're even talking about it in that way, right? Because like, if we've already cleared the plagiarism allegations, then we're kind of just left with like a mid as fuck reading of Utena, and I can throw out a million of those. I've read so many of those, and it feels weird to just be dunking on this one.
All right, and that's
Yeah,
why we don't need to watch the video. Good night, everyone.
But yeah, he's guilty of plagiarism, so it's fine.
So it's fine. This is topical. That's why we're here.
Everything.
That changes everything.
What's perhaps some context or something that perhaps maybe make it a bit more interesting when we're watching it is, I've never, again, before H-Bomber, I think I was aware of him. I think some people in like a video Discord server that I'm in like found his videos very good and compelling, and they liked them, and he obviously very popular before the allegations, before the plagiarism, of course. But I think so. I'm not sure how many other videos he's made on anime before, but the attitude and all these little kind of like jokes he's going to insert, and it's because anime is just it's like 2001 like era internet humor about anime.
Like, I don't
so dismissive.
I don't understand this bit right off the bat where it's like flashing lights in some scenes because anime. It's like that's not a that is an anime
actually,
thing, but it's not like that's not like a known trope of anime.
So Thomas Lemaire would actually find this really interesting, because in his sort of second seminal book, the Anime Ecology, the first section he talks about Pokemon Shock, which was the fallout from the episode that gave a whole bunch of children epileptic seizures. And that's the origin of the like flashing lights are going to cause you like seizures, and like all the jokes that come from like battling seizure robots. And then specifically all the when in some of the very like early open, like I forget the terminology, the when like an episode comes on and there's like, please sit in a well lit room and far away from the television, like anime characters are telling you to do this. It all stems from this one specific instance. So it's fascinating.
Can we talk about the fact that Pokemon wasn't even like the worst offender of this back in like the late 90s?
Oh God, no.
No one ever talks about fucking Gal Gaigar. That fucking shit fucking fried my brain with that fucking strobe light effect. Jesus.
So the thing is,
I don't think little kids are watching Gal Gaigar.
It wasn't the episode so much as it was the way that it was broadcast, and there was a specific not frequency but light patterning that was happening through the broadcast that made it it was I don't have the book in front of me, but yeah, it was basically like, it wasn't the fact that it was because it was broadcast, as opposed to if you're watching like the raw video.
Mm-hmm.
It was something to do with like CRT and the way that the technology works. I haven't got the notes in front of me again, so I do apologize. But yeah, but again, it's really grating. This whole joke, this running joke about anime's wacky.
Yeah,
I think Simpsons did it better back in the day. I mean, you should just stop whenever that joke was made. Was like 2002. I think it's like that should be like the end of it.
That's the cutoff. It's now no longer. Well, I guess it was never really. Anyway, we're already hung up, and we're only 5 seconds into the damn video. So let's
a bit of a digression. Anime's cool now, kids. That's all you have to know.
That's all you have to know.
Right. This is what happened, more or less. The magical girl trope.
Okay, that probably just blew up people's eardrums. Hold on.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Anime hit a fever pitch
there
in the 1990s
Holy
with
fuck.
the international phenomenon of Sailor Moon, which typified the style.
Loud,
Both in
yeah.
homage and parody, these tropes have been recreated by artists ever since, and have also become an entire genre in their own right.
I'm sorry.
Whether it's newer magical girls like
Sailor Moon
Pelamaji Madoka Magica,
No.
the westernized magical girls like the
have a
cast of
problem
She-Ra
with
and the Princesses of
how
Power,
he's
or the
talking.
gender-bent magical boys of Q
just
Pirate
the cadence
Defense
of his
Club.
voice.
The trope has been a staple
No.
of animation for decades, but none, to my knowledge, have been more discussed and dissected.
I'm just obviously hyper sensitive to this kind of nonsense, but he
Bent
starts
magical
off
boy.
by calling it the magical girl. Sailor Moon popularized the anime trope of magical girl, and then so magical girl itself is a trope, not like a genre. Like, nothing like that. It's a trope. And then in a few 5 seconds or 10 seconds later, he talks about the tropes that other series pulled from and then so the genre, so the Sailor Moon itself is a trope, and then all the tropes of magical girl is also tropes. So everything is tropes. This is why I hate this word. This is why this word is less than useless for any kind of meaningful analysis, because a trope is just it's literally the building blocks of everything. So it's nothing. It's banal. It means nothing.
Right.
I hate it so much.
You might as well almost be talking about like memes in like the Richard Dawkins sense at that point. What are the memes? What are the memetics of the magical girl genre, of which
the other thing I'd like to say is, like, what's the point of introducing this context for the state of the magical girl genre post Sailor Moon, then not using it for anything in your hour-long reading of Revolutionary Girl Utena?
Yeah, I'm struggling to understand how this connection is going to be, like, because there's the obvious connection between Sailor Moon and Utena, which is
Ikuhara,
and some other staff members I'm just blanking on right now, but like there's an obvious like sort of thing going on there. As Shave said, yeah, script intro, how do I start this video, I guess.
And also because Utena's magical girl, right? That's why.
I guess.
Yeah, but if your reading doesn't rely on thinking about it in that way, you don't talk about these are the genre. This is like stuff that I talked about in my thing at the start of my breakdown of Adolescence Moon. In all my things, I say I'm looking at this from the point of view of a magical girl fan. If you're just going to talk about the history of the show, then just talk about it as a show.
Yeah. Let's
I think it's leading up to This is how Utena deconstructs.
Oh no!
Oh,
Well,
God.
Richard did say he
Okay,
does not
fine.
use the D
To
word.
his credit, he does not. He now the wiki that he lifted from does, and I actually went back and looked in because they use the the deconstruction of fairy tale and magical girl,
Oh.
and I went and looked at the sources that they use.
Mhm.
Most of which I had actually read before, but then it's like, well, this is a tangent. This is just nerd stuff for me, but it's like Napier, which yes, she did. Napier was one of the very, very earlier adopters of this language. She specifically used it for Utena, for Lane, and for Evangelion.
Mhm.
And then a couple other ones were like, there's nothing in the entire, the word deconstruction does not appear in the entire article at all.
Mhm.
So it's like, why are you quoting this? Why is Wiki quoting this person? They're not talking about deconstruction at all. Why? But yeah, and the other sources were like that. But yeah, so no, to his credit, he does not go, Utena is good because it's a deconstruction of the magical girl or of the high, like the high school hierarchy.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you know what? As we talk more and more about it, I'm kind of more convinced that the writer that he has wrote this, because that's a level of awareness that you would only get if you were somewhat involved in the anime fandom and knew that the word deconstruction is absolute anathema and just has been so ridiculed and belittled in any
It's like a
type of
shibboleth essentially. Anyone who doesn't know what a shibboleth is, let me pull up handy dandy dictionary. There you go.
There you go. Yeah, shibboleth. Nice. I learned a word
There we
today.
go. Yeah, we learned a new word today, everyone. I realize this also with the filter I have on, probably very unreadable. But you get what you pay for.
Keep going on this video.
Yeah, all right. We're now 34 seconds in.
Gender-bent magical boys of cute High Earth Defense Club. The trope has been a staple of animation for decades, but none, to my knowledge, have been more discussed and dissected than the 1997 series Revolutionary Girl Utena, created by...
See, doesn't all this feel like it should be plagiarized?
I'm also just thinking about that claim because I'm also thinking about myself. Well, it's like, I know Sailor Moon probably very heavily written on. I know Madoka is, and then Utena's certainly up there, but it's like, that's
Sailor
whatever.
Moon's probably talked about more than Utena, to be honest.
I guess let's do a little bit of fact checking. I guess let's go to like Google Scholar and then let's just see what comes up.
From my albeit limited reading, yes, Sailor Moon gets talked about more in terms of especially early analysis, like people like Napier, like McCarthy. Utena, I would say on the whole, probably has a lot more like fan writing about it. And some very interesting. So yeah, I guess for people who aren't aware, just to throw it out there, there is a Twitter account called Empty Movement, who's one of the, and I'm not that super familiar with other stuff outside of that, and the fact they run if you want to know stuff like Utena news and stuff, just follow them.
They have a Discord
I think
as well. Yeah.
And then Kai, you said they're also on the Utena cast, right?
Yeah. So I'm familiar with those guys, and I reached out to them, panned over the Utena cast, and I was like, "So are we talking about this James Somerton Utena video? What's happening?" She tweeted out something about that, and I think the people from Empty Movement, I asked them if they wanted to be here and talk about it. They're doing their own thing. They're gonna talk about this video and this reading of Utena because it became so popular. So if you want to go look at their Patreon or just get on their Discord server, I'm sure they'll share it when they've recorded and created their take on this exact video.
I was going to say again, script,
and then again, if you're looking for like decent, good videos, not videos, rather essays on Utena, otori.nu is the kind of repository that is run
by Empty Movement, and that's the definitive thing. That's like that's the place. So if if somebody like Somerton were to plagiarize an essay on Utena, it would be from Empty Movement.
That's right.
But it's all out there and it's all listed, and we didn't get any hits looking through it. So
Yep.
You know?
This is all, and the supreme irony is that arguably his last video is the least plagiarized.
Yeah, yeah, it's very funny.
Unless, again, well, I guess if it is plagiarized, then the person that is being plagiarized at this point will most likely see this video and be like, "What the fuck? They stole my points," and then
Right,
it'll come out, I guess. And I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess if
please
this
let me
stream
know.
stays
I would
up,
like to know.
Yeah,
I guess if the
seriously,
stream stays up and it does like end up coming out like there's like plagiarized elements in like the analysis portion of this video, we'll also like I'll edit the description to link to that as well.
it would have to be video content. I don't think there's any written content that they plagiarized.
By Bipapas, a production group formed by director Ikuhara Kunihiko, Saito Shiho, Hasegawa Shinya, Enokido Yoji, and Oguro Yurichiro. So let's dive into the mesmerizing world of Ikuhara's creative journey. You see, back in the 90s, Ikuhara graced Toei Animation with his presence during the production of the beloved Sailor Moon series. He co-directed the second season, Sailor Moon R, alongside Sato Yunichi, and took the helm as the sole director for both the animated film Sailor Moon R the movie and the third season, Sailor Moon S.
I guess just a quick thing to point out here, when he says co-directed for the second season, I
Yeah, I was about to
believe
look that up. Yeah,
what happened was Hisato directed the first 12 episodes, that first arc in season 2.
Yep,
and
Doom Tree
then-
arc. Yep, is all Sato.
And then Ikuhara basically takes over like going forward.
Yep. He actually makes a factual error coming up here too. He says that Ikuni left at the end of Sailor Moon S, but he left at the end of Sailor Moon Supers.
But Ikuhara grew restless in the confines
Hold on, did I see something?
film Sailor Moon R the movie and the third season Sailor Moon
Our
S.
movie's so
But
good.
Ikuhara grew restless in the confines of adapting
very
existing works,
So very
longing for some creative control. Thus, after the conclusion of Sailor Moon S in 1995, he set forth on a quest to birth an original series. In this endeavor, he assembled the illustrious Bipapas, a consortium of creative talents from
This is all plagiarized. Go.
100%.
Let's be clear.
Just open up the wiki and you can read along with him as he goes.
Let me see
Where is
here.
it? I kinda
I know
want
you
to.
like why don't you link me the wiki and I'll pull it up and then you can
It's
just like go through it.
The other thing is like everybody already knows this. Like everybody that knows Utena knows this history. So I don't know. I just kind of like
so what
glossed
becomes a
over
question
it.
of, well, who's this video for? Is it for people who are not familiar with Utena? Well, if that's the
Right.
case, you should give like a
Right,
spoiler
exactly.
warning if he's going to end up
Right,
spoiling
yeah.
stuff in the show anyway.
It's definitely for his audience, which I'm assuming is primarily not going to be anime watchers.
Right.
So let's see here.
Which it's fun as you go down to development. It's seriously fine to read a Wikipedia page, like you know, and charge people $10,000 a month for it.
At least at least cite your damn sources.
Yeah.
It's not hard. It's not. Let's see here then. So okay, it's literally so we'll rewind it a little bit.
So let's dive into the mesmerizing world of Ikuhara's creative journey. You see, back in the 90s, Ikuhara graced Toei Animation with his presence during the production of the beloved Sailor Moon series. He co-directed the second season, Sailor Moon R, alongside Sato Yunichi, and took the helm as the sole director for both the animated film Sailor Moon R the movie and the third season, Sailor Moon S. But Ikuhara grew restless in the confines of adapting existing works, longing for
so
Sato Yunichi, and took the helm as the sole director for both the animated film Sailor Moon R the
hold on,
movie
God damn it, I
and
need
the
to
third
like
season
let me rewind again, sorry.
of the beloved.
I need to go back down to development. I'm realizing it's probably hard to read on stream like this, but I think it might be a little bit better now that I've like zoomed in a fair amount.
If you guys type Revolutionary Girl Utena into Wikipedia, you can follow along right
Sailor
with
Moon
us.
series. He co-directed the second season, Sailor Moon R, alongside Sato Yunichi, and took the helm as the sole
Why
director.
does he pronounce it like that?
Revolutionary Girl
Why does he
Utena.
pronounce it Yunichi? Is that like it's not?
No, it's Junichi.
Junichi, not Yunichi. He's not Latino.
The animated film Sailor Moon R the movie and the third season Sailor Moon S. But Ikuhara grew restless in the confines of adapting existing works, longing for some creative control. Thus, after the conclusion of Sailor Moon S in 1995, he set forth on a quest to birth an original series. In this endeavor, he assembled the illustrious Bipapas, a consortium of creative talents from anime and manga. You see, Bipapas had quite the history together. Hasegawa and Enokido had previously joined forces with Ikuhara on Sailor Moon, where Enokido penned many episodes featuring the iconic Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune. Bipapas had also lent their talents to the esoteric Neon Genesis Evangelion. As for Saito, she was a seasoned manga artist who had not yet ventured into the realm of anime. Now, initially, Ikuhara envisioned Utena as a mainstream.
Bipapas was founded in 1996. They worked on Eva in 95. So
yeah,
they're time traveling. Like
the Papas had not formed yet. What he means is like members of the group had worked on it. But this is so funny to go through.
Change things around, and you're like, oh, just change the wording a bit. You changed it to something that's
you just
actually inaccurate. Yeah,
this is awesome. Oh my god! Like I know, I think we talked about this a little bit in the last stream, but it's. I'm sorry if this reads too deep, but he just sounds so businesslike. This is like such a transaction for his fans instead of something he wanted to make. Yeah, I could definitely see that being the case, because before his channel was taken down, he had like a fall trailer for the upcoming videos. How much money do you think I could make reading off the Wings of Hania Mise wiki? You could make it that could just be a 7-hour-long video.
This goes on for like 2 parts. Like the first 15 minutes of this video is him reading this Wikipedia page.
Is it just me, or doesn't saying Japanese names last first sound pretentious? What I'm curious is he going to be consistent on that? He said Sato Yunichi, which is...
Well, it's funny because in another Twitter thread where people are talking about it, someone was like, oh, the reason I found out that it was plagiarized was because he mentioned, this is like one of the 2 places he mentioned Guro in the entire video.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned here and one other place and never again.
Yeah.
Wait.
With Ikuhara on Sailor Moon, where Enokido penned many episodes featuring the iconic Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune. Bipapas had also lent their talents to the esoteric Neon Genesis Evangelion. As for Saito, she was a seasoned manga artist who had not yet ventured into the realm of anime. Now, initially, Ikuhara envisioned Utena as a mainstream shoujo series, hoping to ride the coattails of Sailor Moon's commercial success. In fact, it began with a concept titled Revolutionary Girl Utena Kiss, featuring a group of valiant female warriors known as the Neo Elegansar.
Oh my god.
Extravaganza!
Battling
what
the enigmatic
was that?
end of
That's a joke.
Not yet ventured into the realm of anime. Now, initially, Ikuhara envisioned Utena. In fact, they began with a concept titled Revolutionary Girl Utena Kiss, featuring a group of valiant female warriors known as the Neo Elegansar.
Eleganza extravaganza!
Battling the enigmatic...
What is the joke?
Related to his audience. To make it consumable. It's the value add, man.
Please become funny.
Yeah. Laugh.
Enigmatic end of the world. But as the creativity flowed, they settled on a different path. A romantic action show starring a pretty girl who wears boys' clothes. The school setting was a cornerstone of anime, but other elements like the duels and the mysterious Rose Bride were yet to enter the plot. As Bipapas commenced their 6-month planning phase after Saito's arrival, they delved into the nitty-gritty of the story.
Hold on. We can find it. Let's just do Control F. 6 months. Oh?
Hyphenated.
Hyphenated, yeah.
Yep, there we go. Jesus Christ. How long do you think this is going to happen?
We can literally skip it because I told you for 15 minutes he goes on for
God,
the reason.
Yes.
Fucking damn it. Is this this is just going to be the first half of this video?
Utena becomes Anthe's new groom.
They do
the struggle of trying
summary.
It does get
Oh,
two, but I
God.
already have one. Because she does not know us at the powered reincarnation.
Put
Events
it
can be
this way.
taken vastly different.
The one note that I had was at 9:13, and I think this is like the only place. There's 1 or 2 places I put a timestamp. He says something that I was like, I wasn't able to find
Japanese
any source for anywhere. like where this claim came from. So I'm
All
really
right.
curious.
Okay, let's see what he says.
Japanese version is more clearly translated to apocalypse, I'm told, but was not used, or perhaps
So
at the
sorry, if you
whim
go back a little bit more, maybe. It's so basically what
or
the claim
perhaps
is.
worlds.
Watch the claim.
at present
So let's see.
only members of the student council wear. The student council is not pleased that they've lost their ability to shape the world of the future and seek to get Anthe back from Utena, with the help, or perhaps at the whim, of a mysterious benefactor codenamed End of the World. The Japanese version is more clearly translated to apocalypse, I'm told, but was not used in English because of the apparent close ties to religious overtones.
Nanami.
Okay, no, he's wrong.
I don't.
Because- and
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not a Japanese speaker, okay?
Mhm.
But I know I can hear words. So, and again, one of the most, perhaps only slightly less famous than, or well known than the opening of Utena is the Zetai Unmei Moku Shiroku song, right? And that's literally ultimate apocalypse or ultimate destiny apocalypse. So the word for apocalypse in Japan is mokushiroku.
Mhm.
The word for end.
Go ahead.
The word for end of the world is seki no ware. So they're two different words. So if you listen to the Japanese, when they're talking about end of the world, they say seki no ware. But when they say apocalypse, they say mokushiroki. Oh, sorry, mokushiroku.
So
So
yeah, I
it's
guess. And you tried to see like, okay, you're assuming we're still in plagiarism world. Where did this claim
Yeah,
come
that would
from?
be a fingerprint, right? That
Yeah.
Right. But there isn't. I couldn't find any basis for this claim anywhere.
Huh. Yeah, apocalypse. Like, I don't know why apocalypse would be an issue, because I mean, you already have like Evangelion going from what was it, Shinsekai Evangelion to Neon Genesis. Like, it became more religious.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really sure. This, yeah, I think you actually were talking about this. It just sounds like fan lore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Richard,
I'm told. It came to me in a dream.
So this is something that's like, is this apocryphal? That's just something that the Utena fans spread among themselves, and whoever did write this kind of like misunderstood that fact or got that wrong. And this is one of those things where you're grading this paper and then you circle this and you're like question mark, and you're like C-. What the fuck?
Yeah, and it's like, and the thing is, I couldn't, like, this is the kind of thing you'd be expect to be able to find some kind of footprint for. You'd be able to Google it, you'd be able to search and see this claim coming, and nothing, no Reddit threads, no Usenet threads, nothing I looked in. Was there anything about this little tidbit? But it does lead into this throwaway joke.
Okay.
About incest.
Yeah, what the fuck was this? This one made me mad. This right here. If you click play.
All right, let's see what happens.
You like girls more than boys?
Yes.
Listen, Nanami. God created men and women for a reason. That reason being that they join in the best sort of way. No matter how good something may feel, going against God's plan is...
What are you implying, big brother? You know you're the only one that I love.
Utena, through her close connection and apparent engagement to Anthe,
What?
And then just leaves it out there to die.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, right off the bat, if you're making a joke that's just like, meanwhile, this was fine, it may be indicating that what you're saying is not true.
Right. Well, a couple things.
It's like, okay, yeah, if that's fine, if they leave that in, then maybe they didn't actually change the thing that you're saying they changed for religious like concerns.
Yeah, a couple things, right? Like, one, you've taken this clip wildly out of context for what it means for Nanami and Toga and everything in like that episode, like that, all of that, and Toga's manipulation of his sister, and like all of that is in universe. Toga is a bad guy, and yes, he's like obviously espousing things that the creators of the show don't believe to be true, etc., etc., etc. He's not representative of the value system of whatever. But then also the joke doesn't fucking work, because like making the logical leap between, oh, this one thing is fine and this one thing isn't fine, is like it's not even a functional joke, you know? Like there's no
No.
through line that draws between those two.
You're just gonna have to go back to please become funny.
Yeah, and the thing is, right? This was localized for distribution via a DVD, like VHS DVD, right? It never
Mhm.
had like it was broadcast in like Hawaii, with like 14 episodes, and then it was on Funimation's channel on the internet. But it wasn't like Ava eventually got a TV release of much after, right? But
Yeah.
Utena never did. So
No.
Yeah.
the usual concerns about censorship don't really play into account because it's only ever really in relation to broadcast television.
Right. You could release whatever the fuck you wanted straight to DVD back in like the 90s and early 2000s.
Right?
So,
So it's
yeah.
just it's weird. It's weird, but it's original. Like, where did this thing come? Where did this come from?
What is
This joke is so bad that we can't put it at the feet of somebody else, you know?
Dude doesn't even try to frame it as a joke. If nobody has seen Utena, that just sounds like the real dub. Is it not the real dub? I'm sorry. What? Wait.
Usually just prove his point. God damn.
Yeah, I've not seen it. Is it,
Oh man, it's been too long.
oh
I
god,
believe that's the real dub.
I need
That's the
another
voice
shot of
actors for the real
whiskey.
dub. Yeah.
Let's see here.
I'm not seeing it using a dub, so
Yeah. Is there anything else in this plot synopsis section that we need to go through?
Into the series.
No, my next timestamp was like, oh, and I said, let me have a look here. I'm just going through my notes. Sorry.
Oh, do we want to hit the bottoms joke? What is that?
Oh,
the bottoms joke.
Yeah, where's that at?
Oh, it's right immediately after this. Just play it. Yeah, it's immediately after this. Yep. After this paragraph.
Okay.
Don't let me listen to it again. Thank you.
Works at coaching Anthe to think for herself. An unfortunate drawback of the Rose Bride is that the Rose Bride can only ever do or feel the way that she is instructed to by her betrothed.
This was
even as her
such a
bridegroom, Utena tirelessly
bad interpretation of you could pause it here because I got a fucking rant here. This was one of my things that pissed me off in just like an interpretation of Revolutionary Girl Utena, and you clearly understood Anthe's role in this show. But his whole shit about like denying Anthe any agency throughout the entire show. Like Anthe is an active participant in Anthe's whole issues. Like there's some element of Anthe doing things that he completely negates here, and I think it's like a big whoosh moment where it kind of went over the person whoever wrote this did not fundamentally understand Anthe. But that that's fair. I see that in a lot of.
And he later on will contradict himself because he actually talks about when he introduces Akio. He's like, and this is when Anthe started getting jealous when she they talk about her poisoning Utena's tea. And I was like, wait a second, like 2 minutes ago this person was a mindless automaton that just does the will of their master. Now they're able to plot and scheme. You're contradicting yourself in your own video.
Yeah,
that isn't great.
He does that again though. When it comes up, there's like a whole thing where he starts talking about whatever. What was it? Oh, abstraction and just the semiotics of everything and how it's all postmodern and not allegorical. And then literally later in the video, he claims it's allegorical. And I'm like, what the fuck?
I don't know what this has to do with the Clinton administration, but all right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a funny joke.
That's good. That's good. You could write for James Somerton.
I could write for James Somerton.
You're too funny to write,
if you ever end up watching this, hit me up.
We got to get to this bottoms joke.
Yeah, good lord.
Coaches Anthe to advocate for her own needs and her own feelings, and to do what she wants rather than what her magical husband person to be tells her. I'm sure tops of all genders can identify with both the irony and endless struggle of trying to coax their bottoms into being less subservient. In the first arc,
what the fuck?
Oh, that's bad. That's real bad. That's not. That's what we say in the business. No bueno. That's really, really,
So
again,
bad, dude.
please, for the love of Christ, become funny. Yeah, who is that joke for?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Even to his intended audience, like, I just paused the video at that time. I was like, "What the fuck did I just? What did he just say? What?"
Oh, that's like a collective like facepalm moment. Jesus Christ.
Big cringe.
I guess let's just skip through. So where does like the plot synopsis section end? Like you said, like
there are what do you call it?
Forced upon-
Chapters in this thing. Like he breaks it into
Older brother,
part one,
some-
part two,
some
part
bombs be-
three. What does he say? He goes through the first arc and explaining the whole first arc over the next bit. I didn't get timestamps on any of it.
I know it's at 1627. He starts talking about magical realism.
Let's go there.
Okay, let's go there.
And that was before he gets to his thesis, which is something that really one of the things that I found very annoying. But we'll get to that.
Somerton's core audience is weird, annoying millennials. I'm pretty sure. Wait a minute. If you look at our analytics, that's a hard demographic.
Yeah, I was about to say, as a weird, annoying, and a millennial.
Yeah, right.
Fuck. We take that back. We take that back.
Couldn't be me.
Couldn't-
I'm still looking for the person who did this.
Let's see.
on at the same time, and specifically in the realm of magic realism, the Sword of Dios, Dios himself, the Upside Down Castle, Anthy's magic and backstory as a witch, and just a whole lot more. I am gonna drop some bombs because my reading of Revolutionary Girl Utena seems to be vastly different than the bulk of the discourse I've found.
I laughed at that.
Oh boy.
He's like, prepare for the hot takes, motherfuckers. I'm like, good, hit me with it.
And then what do you say? They're just mild.
Yeah, they're lukewarm as fuck.
Yeah, and they're things people have written about for like 3 decades at this point.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And this is why I'm a nerd. I admit that up front. But this is what happens when you don't do the reading. When you're basically making this in a vacuum where you've never actually engaged with fandom. Or your engagement with fandom is like maybe like trolling through the reviews on Mal. And you never bothered doing something like going to otori.nu and looking at all the essays and things that have been written about this before and all the discourse, and or even putting it into Google.
This is what we call in the business a literature review.
That's right. When you don't do that part, then you make an ass of yourself because you speak to an audience. This is again the closest part I can think of was I think it was last week. You had the guys doing video game running. We're the first people to talk about video games as literature, and then the entire game studies community just laughed.
Yeah, it's like,
like what are you talking about?
It's like, even I think like H-Bomb does that, and like I think it's like his what's it called, Dark Souls 2 video or something, where doesn't he just like invent the idea of like conditional play or something, where it's like basically like he's like talking about like the idea that of like video games can like condition players to act in a certain way, and he's talking about it's like it's a novel concept when that's been like a part of game studies since the turn of the century.
And two, the thing is, like, you would think that would be almost diametrically opposed to plagiarism, right? That not doing the research is plagiarism is doing all the research where you just copy
and then
everything.
you just steal things, and you don't really add anything new of your own. But this is more so like reinventing the wheel when you didn't need to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like the point of like a literature review and the point of these kinds of things that you can build like a sort of like nexus, like a body of work spanning across different videos, and you can sort of like build on top of things that have already been done rather than just recreating them or stealing them.
And two, like, I don't want to go too far at this one. I don't want to burn him on the stake for this, because I literally did a presentation at Otakon this year talking about like textual criticism and how to engage with it. And one of the things that I really do believe when you engage with media is that you're going to have a unique perspective that nobody else on earth has. But at the same time, your perspective is not going to be that much different than everybody else's. And I think that, like, you can create a reading that is, I guess I would say, you don't have to read everything on Empty Movement before you can come talk about Utena.
No.
You know, you can present something forth, and that's fine, and that's why I give it a C and not an F. You know,
Mhm.
but yeah, at the same time, if you're like charging people for it and like want to have the definitive voice, or like you would expect a higher level of effort put into understanding what's already been said about the topic, you know?
Yeah, I guess the fact that this is a Patreon video kind of, I mean, it's funny because like the joke with our Patreon content is that, oh, it's all low effort and stuff, but you know, this is like a Patreon exclusive kind of thing. It literally says, you know, thank you patrons at the start, so it's kind of like, maybe put in a little bit more elbow grease, something, maybe. I don't know. Let's
Yeah.
continue.
I mean, again, you could argue that he did because this is mostly original content, right?
Right.
I
Right, and
guess.
Yeah.
Not to
I
mention the
wonder
actual
if
You said?
allegations of plagiarism.
Plagiarism. It's a soft G.
Do you know how hard it is to spell plagiarism? Holy shit!
It
Try
is.
doing
I was
it without
actually
looking at the
last year. I was literally like, how the fuck do I spell this again? That doesn't
Right.
look right.
I wonder if the allegations caught up to him, and this was kind of their response: was just read Wikipedia and then like make some bad takes. You know?
That'd be interesting. Again, I
It'd
need to
be
see when
interesting
this
'cause then I
video
guess it
was
would be like
made.
if-
Like, when did this video come out? And we can't really. Maybe we were to like check like the archives for his Patreon page. I could deduce that.
Jamie, pull it up, Jamie.
I mean,
Or
I
find it
could
on Twitter when
try.
people started talking about it.
I think it was released relatively close to when H Bomber's video came out.
Okay. Well, because H Bomber Guy's
Well, I
video,
mean,
the
like, on
first half of it
Patreon.
anyway, we had known about it since August at least, and then of course the second half is solely dedicated to James Somerton. So maybe he had just heard about it through like the grapevine or whatever, and was like, "Oh no."
Yeah,
But
but
I've already
also the
promised to make this Utena
allegations
video.
of plagiarism preceded the video, right?
Yeah.
Like on live streams and stuff. In H Bomber Guy's video, he has him like answering questions about plagiarism. So maybe
Okay.
got ahead of the 8 ball there.
Hasn't really so instead of just crediting the things that he's read, he's just like, fuck it, I'm not gonna read anything.
Yeah, or
I guess that's
if you did read
that's
it,
one way
wasn't-
to do it.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Wikipedia page. And sure, you could take it
Oh
literally.
yeah, he mentions the Wikipedia.
You could assume that
page.
Dios was
Can you
the
go back and
former
rewind that?
incarnation of
'Cause
Akio,
he gives a
who
shout
was
out to the
literally
Wikipedia page, and I said
found.
lol.
Not to mention the actual Wikipedia page, and sure, of the discourse I've found. Not to mention the actual Wikipedia page, and sure,
There we go. He cited his source. Never mind. It's completely fine now. He
We
cited.
apologize.
Shout out to Wikipedia for writing half my video for me.
Shout out to Wikipedia. Shout out to, I don't know. Let's look at the history page. Let's see who's been working on this. Shout out to Philip Nelson 99, Morgan's 695. I can't pronounce that.
Just go through and give
Neocorelite.
credit
Oh
to
my god. So
everybody.
piled higher and deeper.
Do you need an account on
Jackalope Girl.
Wikipedia? Do you need an account on Wikipedia to edit it? Because I want to go fix those factual errors.
No.
about
So
Pseudo
if you don't have an account, it'll basically just like appear as your IP address.
Okay.
But I don't know. It's you can also like I think just put it in a name itself and it'll appear red like this. But yeah, I'm never actually had to edit a Wikipedia page before, so don't quote me on any of this.
Right.
H-Bomb said this time he had gone down the hole and worked out back. He gone down the hole and worked out backwards. The video was meant to be about James from the start, but he fleshed it out with other YouTubers afterwards. Interesting. Caught in the Shadows video covers how James co-author didn't plagiarize because they self-admit to never having done research on anything they've ever written. I saw that. Jesus Christ.
sure, you could take it literally. You could assume that Dios was the former incarnation of Akio, who was transformed / imprisoned by Anthe, who is a witch, a damsel in distress, and also simultaneously the vestige of all men's hatred who desperately want Prince Dios to deflower their daughter, and that's not outside the realm of normal for anime. Or we can observe Revolutionary Girl Utena as a deeply allegorical and symbolic story about the struggles of coming of age amidst widespread institutional corruption in a high school, and which describes a passive culture of inaction in regard to brazen instances of domestic exploitation, in which
Jamie, pull up the Wikipedia.
Oh
I
no,
was
you
about to say,
you can't
is
be
it
serious.
No. Go to theme. Go to keep scrolling down. Keep scrolling down.
Oh
Themes and analysis?
no.
Go to number 2.
What is it, coming of age?
Yes. So his out of the box, no one has ever done this before. I'm gonna blow your mind. Is the second thematic and theme on Wikipedia.
Wait a second, but he also said that like he hadn't encountered anything like this on Wikipedia before.
It's in the article.
My God,
Where is it?
That's
Where
so
is
dishonest.
it coming to?
Well, he said it's a deeply allegorical story about the struggles of coming of age.
Yeah,
And the second entry is coming of age.
Oh no.
And also like how I know literally no one who watches Revolutionary Girl Utena and doesn't understand on some degree that events are not literally happening. You know,
Yeah.
like of all the anime that you could possibly miss that on, Revolutionary Girl Utena is like the last one.
It's like me watching like Twin Peaks and being like, damn, that was a crazy murder mystery show with no broader implications regarding like media.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I don't know why you would even have to say that, oh, it has some thematic depth to it or like non-literal symbolism or semiotics.
Again, that seems like such a trivial take.
Yeah, and then go back to the clip, and the next part is there's the Le mot juste.
Which there is not only a question about the corporeality of the events transpiring, but also which events can be taken for granted, and which events are meant to signify abstract sociological institutions which may be otherwise difficult to articulate in fiction. Which is, quite frankly, a lot more effort. But unfortunately we have postmodernism, so I guess we have to try.
What does that mean? What do you mean more effort?
Fantastic.
What does he mean?
Why?
It writes itself.
Like what? And then he goes into postmodernism. Then he just goes to the Wikipedia page on postmodernism, right?
Yeah.
Oh no,
I
he's
could-
not. God damn it! Let me pull
That's
it up.
something I would like to talk to if it's not going to be too distracting.
First that line, right? Like, okay, yes, Revolutionary Girl Utena is framed so that you never know which way is up. You are never sure what is literally happening, what is a character's perception. Utena does not literally turn into a car, or does she? Doesn't matter. That's kind of the point. That's what Ikuni is literally trying to do. It's very, very clear, right?
Right.
And I think I mentioned years and years ago, I said that one of the clips he showed right there, the only time you are sure that something is literally happening, I think there's like 2 moments throughout all of Revolutionary Girl Utena that you're sure that it's not symbolic or a representation in some way. And one is anti-suicide or Anti's attempted suicide. Like that is a thing that literally happens, and it's like very clear what's going on, and that Utena saves her. Or at least in my mind, you know, I'm sure somebody could argue this.
Interesting. Well, you know it's coming, so.
Well, go ahead.
Because that's one of the points. That's one of the things he points to, is like, this is allegory. This is not literally Anthe trying to end herself. Is that's complete allegory. So, and this is why this nerd stuff's interesting, right? Because I'm a what you would call a strong anti-intention. No, I'm a soft strong anti. And authors can have it. Authors can have their intentions work that they produce. I just don't think it's necessarily the best or most interesting reading of a text.
Right, and that's where we're at with reader response criticism, right? Like that's the current state of textual criticism, as far as I understand it, more or less. That you can't completely disregard the authorial intent, and then you can't, the grand narrative, and you also can't say that no reading matters, or every reading is the same.
I mean, there's some difference between like reader response versus post-structuralist reading, and people trying to be like, well, Barthes was reader response. Is like really reader response.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, the what was the point here was more that it's just one of the things, I guess, like the idea that at this point you could have anything perhaps unique, maybe is the word to say, about Utena. is itself kind of a truism. Like, it's been written about so much that trying to come
Yeah.
up with a novel take on it.
Yeah.
So you know what can you do? You can either just be a very specific element of it, or you do what Mr. Somerton does and just be like not engage with anything at all and just be like, yeah, this is my original take and it's completely brand new. And yeah, sure, it is on the Wikipedia page, but
Yeah. Well,
my viewers don't read.
that's one of the cool things is like, I don't know, Richard, you talked a lot about Kill a Kill, right? And I'm sure you've encountered that one reading of like Kill a Kill and divine imagery, and how it's about like Shinto imagery and light and Amaterasu and all of the uniquely
Yep.
Eastern. Yeah, yeah. And I was like, I always use that as an example of a reading that not everybody is going to have the context to be able to pull out. And the one I used in my panel at Otakon is Free, right? Free, the swimming anime by Kyoto Animation. Like that, yes, it's Fujoshi bait show, right? Like you're supposed to consume the men sexually, right? But I was actually a competitive swimmer. And I literally had the same experiences that these characters had. So like that's another perspective, another reading that you could bring to a work like this, and you could throw it in there. And like Utena is so abstract and rife for different interpretations to flourish. That's why it's been so widely talked about. And this is Evangelion in the same way that kind of shares this, right? And like there are so many things that you can come to Utena with, and then to lay that out there that I'm going to give you something you haven't seen before. And I'm expecting something like, oh, I have this perspective that nobody's talked about before. Because, you see a lot of Utena readings and they're all like, somebody took a feminist studies class in college and I'm looking at it through gender roles. And I'm like, yeah, valid, right? Of course, Utena talks about that. But I've seen that a bunch of times because so many people have taken gender studies classes and watched anime and then it's heard that Revolutionary Girl Utena is the show you need to watch for feminism, right? But I think there are so many more readings of Utena that are out there that could still be discovered, that could still be presented, and are very interesting. And I've read all the Sailor Moon ones, I've read all the feminism ones, I've read all the Ikudi stuff, all that jazz, the authorial background, all that stuff. There's still, I just don't want to sell it short. The idea that you could still say something interesting about Revolutionary Girl Utena. That's my rant.
Incidentally, that Shinto piece on Kill la Kill was by Lex Winters is what they go by now, or their grad student. I'm not entirely grad research assistant at the time, but yeah.
Okay. Let's see what we're gonna get into now with the postmodern neo-Marxism, as they say.
Hijinks is James getting into now?
Postmodernism is a literary, artistic, and philosophical school of thought. Something Wikipedia uses big words.
Okay, so
is he taunting us? Does he know?
I don't want to. He doesn't exactly. It's if he does pull from this, he spends a lot more time making it like he did it, not like the first section where it's almost verbatim.
Right.
But
go ahead.
Postmodernism is something that I've studied and I've read, most of the major thinkers.
Yeah.
And I can tell that he's never engaged with the texts themselves because he's pulling from a Wikipedia page. And Wikipedia is not a good. This is a terrible introduction and explanation of what postmodernism is, because one of the things that it really focuses on, and this is when you can tell someone has they've read books about postmodernism, but they never actually engaged with the text on it. They never read Derrida or Baudrillard or Foucault or Lyotard.
Just secondhand stuff.
Sorry.
Just like secondhand stuff, essentially.
Yeah, they've never read anybody. Is that they'll highlight and focus on this idea that postmodernism is a rejection of the idea of there being objective truth. Now, if you go to a better source, and it's not just Wikipedia, either the Encyclopedia Britannica has the exact same of definition. If you go to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, which is where people should be going to do basic stuff and look up postmodernism, you will note that the term objective does not show up anywhere in the search except for 2 spots, and one is specifically about the Leotard asserting that his perspective, talking about it, was objective, which is his book, The Postmodern Condition, a Report on Knowledge. And then the second one was something along the lines of, talking about a free object or subject identity. So nothing about moral, like there being no such thing as objective truth, because this is a straw man argument. This is something that people talk about, but like Derrida's never like, I reject wholesale the idea of truth. I reject the idea of morality completely. No, not anything he ever said. What it is people taking what they wrote and then making like inferences and implications about what this could mean. And so whenever people talk about postmodernism, they don't talk about the interesting treatment of texts and other really neat things that it does. They talk specifically about the fact that it's all values are equal, so you can go out and murder people, and it's just relativism. That's it. That's what postmodernism comes to. And fortunately, Somerton does the same thing. So when he talks, he does unfortunately back and forth between postmodernism, as he's going to talk about here, the opening part, as kind of the philosophical perspective of postmodernism, the philosophical, not school's the wrong word to use, and then he'll kind of just jump back into literary postmodernism, which is a bit of a different thing. And it's really confusing because he'll say some bizarre, like he says some really weird things about, like, in terms of reading of texts and what like symbols are used. And it's like, I'm rambling, but the basic idea is that part of his thesis is constructed on this specific version of postmodernism, because he'll be like, well, postmodernism. He basically does it the same way it does, like, anime. It's people know what it means, and it means whatever you want it to mean, which is, again, not what postmodernism at all is.
No.
Yeah. And if that's the crowbar that he's using to, that was very good. But if that's the crowbar he's using to pry open Utena, like, that's not, like, I can't imagine why the writer of this video would think that that would be novel in some way.
I don't. If they're insulated from everything, if they didn't do any research, and maybe they're so buried up their own ass that they still somehow end up thinking that they've come to, like, that they've discovered the Americas with Utena, essentially. I could see how that could happen.
Would you need like a philosophy minor, like a couple courses, take a couple courses to fully read everything for postmodernism? Like, when would you encounter postmodernism in its depth in type, like, an academic type of setting?
So I'm not an academic. I've been out of the academy. I have a BA in history. So most, except for a little bit of historiography, because they did get into, like, postmodern history. There's a really decent text called the Postmodern History Reader. It was just because where it happened to be in terms of the development of historiography, the study of history. That was almost the extent that I had ever engaged with in the academy of postmodernism. So everything that I know about it now is just stuff that I've read. So I get books and I read the book.
Well, yeah. But, like, what set you down that path? Was it anime, or was it, like, did you think I need a tool to better understand these things, and people have said postmodernism is the key?
No. So a lot of it kind of, it stems, it's a muddle of things, but, like, being in the 4P server, being in Joe's server, has been one of the most transformative things for me, because prior to me getting into, like, AniTube, and as little as I am, most of my engagement with, and I talked about this in the last podcast I was on with Weeb Crew. Go watch that one; it's a good episode.
I did watch it. I did. Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, I'm rambling. It's not. But was that I do panels at anime conventions, right? So through that, and then trying to find, like, novel, interesting takes, and then getting into things like anime studies, was actually martial arts studies is another area of a relative recent academic field that I was in before I started getting into like AniTube. That's one of the reasons why my channel is called Study of Sports, because some of very early videos are specifically about like, I think for the very first video I did was basically like what Steven Universe can teach us about sword fighting, and I was looking at pedagogy of like a couple episodes that deal with how sword fighting is conceptual.
And that took you to postmodernism?
Yes, because there is so anime studies is an interdisciplinary field. Not anime studies, rather. I mean, anime studies is martial arts studies is interdisciplinary, and that got me to reading about people like Barth, but also importantly Baudrillard. So the first I can remember was basically, or that was exploring the hyper reality of the UFC, and basically, and I would do anime panels, or I would do panels at anime, so it's Anime North primarily, but I would do panels on like martial arts and anime. It's interesting, and so that's where I kind of first encountered Baudrillard in terms of like as introducing a concept like hyper reality, and then currently my big research project is that I'm reading the entire corpus of Baudrillard. So I'm only about halfway through, and I've read some of the later stuff. But anyways, so that's kind of how I got into it. Was again, so yeah, this interaction with myself as someone who likes to talk about anime to other people, you know, with a captive audience, God willing, and yeah,
It might
so
be,
and
it
it's
might
just
be a good tool for further understanding, and then you went for it. Okay, I see that, and the reason I bring this and to bring this back to Somerton's video is just like when whoever was writing the script for this was like thinking about like, okay, here's how we're going to use this to make our take on Utena. Did they just see somewhere along the lines that somebody had said like, oh, it could be thought of in a postmodern way, or did they have some idea of what postmodernism was, or like as previously stated, kind of incomplete idea or incorrect idea about postmodernism, and they were like, oh yes. So this is the crux of the video, right? It's like you're attempting to do a postmodern reading of Revolutionary Girl Utena, right? Like you want to look at this text from this with this lens, right? And the text you've chosen is Utena, probably because your audience is gays, and that's understandable. But you don't want to do a gay reading, right? You don't want to do it like LGBTQ.
the queer reading.
Queer reading. That's what he does. He replaces queer on all the things. Yeah, you don't want to do the queer reading of Utena because that's like your audience's first like, oh, they're gonna expect to do a queer. So maybe in that context, like you know your audience, and you know you have to come up with a novel lens of looking at it that's not the queer reading, and then you maybe something in the back of your mind or something you've read somewhere is like postmodernism is the lens in which I will do this, and surreal aspects of the symbology in Utena, and that's what we're gonna hit here, and that's like the basis for the reading, and like us not coming from the queer perspective first of all, or or having more of an idea with postmodernism, right, than any other lens, that just seems like incredibly banal, and just like, of course it's subjective in some degree, or of course the intentionality could be different, and all these things that he's going to go on to say in his reading of his postmodernist reading, like we just find it kind of basic.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see. We're 18 minutes in.
You need to know is that
Are we fucking this up?
postmodernism.
I don't listen to your streams all the way
No,
through.
this is fine. No. You guys,
Okay.
you two are the ones who are providing me and I with content.
Free
Y'all are doing
content.
heavy lifting. We're just listening.
Well, I
We're
got a
just
freaking
listening.
mission out of this.
is a response to the modernism movement, which hit its peak in the 1920s. It's complicated. There was a lot of overlap, especially when looking at areas of
Richard,
study
can you confirm
which
it's
began
complicated? You don't have to stop.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you don't have to stop. Yeah, but one of the issues with talking about postmodernism, especially the philosophical point, is that most of the people who are clumped, it's sort of like, it's almost like when like BreadTube, as an example.
Yeah.
Allegedly, the people who are BreadTube never called themselves BreadTube. It's something kind of developed organically.
Right.
And then people started just calling them that and lumping them in together. And then if you ask them, like, I'm not Redstream, I'm a YouTuber who people, and it's basically what happened. Like Baudrillard, as the guy that I know the most, was basically like he's completely rejected the idea. Like, even though he talks about the postmodern, he's completely rejected. He completely rejected the label of, his stuff was postmodern.
Yeah.
And the Derrida to some extent, and Foucault.
This is the problem with philosophy: is you get caught up in these semantic dumb shit misunderstandings, and you're just like, God, I hate myself.
So let's see him try to define postmodernism, or like how's this going to contribute to his point.
Shift away from the modernist movement. Architecture was the first area to significantly adapt a style that would be referred to as postmodern. In contrast to the modernists, postmodernism is rooted heavily in relativism and implores a rejection of stable.
Why is this? This feels like bloat also in terms of script writing. It's like, oh yeah, let me define let me just like give you a crash course in postmodernism now, and it's like
early cinema.
But why? Yeah, it's literally like the part 1 early cinema for your talking about, I don't know, the SpongeBob movie or something.
Kind of just what Shape said. It's going through the motions.
Yeah.
And again, it's because he's leaning to this idea of this relativistic, specifically relativistic take on postmodernism.
Yeah.
Where, every reading is as good as another reading.
And concrete, let alone universal truths. Due to the focus around ephemerality, identity, and especially the ways that identity may be concealed or altered in a world which is chronically changing, Revolutionary Girl Utena conforms miraculously to this school of thought. And quite frankly, it seems to be a shining exemplar of presenting these tenets in a way that is clear, though compelling enough, to be more than just a textbook case. This is
okay, so is his argument just Utena is postmodern? Is that the point he's trying to make?
Yeah, his argument is effectively that Utena is a quintessential postmodern text, but the best way to read this text is as almost entirely allegorical. And he goes through his structuring of how he does that.
This kind of reminds me of there's like a 4-hour long Twin Peaks analysis video where the entire video is basically just making the point that Twin Peaks in its entirety is a metaphor for violence on television. Which that's certainly a component of Twin Peaks, but he's like trying to connect everything in the show, like every sort of like character interact, like just all of it basically is about that. And it's like, I don't know if you can read, like there are things that just happen in Twin Peaks literally. It's not all like a metaphor to just be decoded.
Yeah, I think that there's some merit in making a reading like this. Like, I don't have any intrinsic problem with like everything's abstracted and here's my interpretation of Utena. I think that's fine, actually. You know, I would disagree in some points, like I did earlier with the suicide scene, but like, you've established that you're making a reading in a postmodern lens. Go for it. Okay, let's see your evidence.
Sure. Now, let's see.
Considered one of the most significant and influential animes of the 90s for a very good reason. Now, it's easy to see how this anime fits into a postmodern framework from the theme alone. You've got a bunch of teenagers who are not only struggling with ways to project their true selves into the world, but also struggling to reconcile what that true self even is. There is an ongoing discussion about gender, developing sexuality, coming of age, direct and indirect challenges to establish values, a question of truth versus illusion, a distrust of therapy that feels at home with Scientology, and ultimately a threat of losing oneself in a sea of modernity. That's
okay. You're losing me again, because this is because like the definition now of postmodernism that he gave was so like slapdash and like.
Yeah,
now he's running into the issue. It's like, is the idea just that having allegories or metaphors in your story is that a postmodern storytelling device.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Like, yeah,
Yes, he's 100% ironically, yes, that's the answer. It's like multi-perspective is where he kind of settles, and it's like Faulkner was writing about using multi-perspective in the 20s, my man, and he's like one of the like gets thrown into like the core modernist American text. People have written about
Damn, that
postmodern
shit's
readings of this text,
crazy. Have
but-
I ever told you guys about this crazy idea I've had? This is my idea, by the way. About
say,
like,
the
what
20s,
if we
that's
were in a
been-
cave or some shit?
You're underselling literature throughout literally all of human history. Like, some of the
Yeah.
greatest works ever made have this level of, scare quote postmodernism to them,
Yeah.
right? Of course.
Can we address that joke, by the way? What?
Yeah. So what he's talking about is specifically the Black Rose arc, so the second arc, which doesn't happen, right? The entire, arguably, the entire thing is completely. They didn't adapt it into the manga.
Right.
But-
The end of the Black Rose arc is that building just burning down, looking at it. Yeah.
So is he saying the confessional scenes are a distrust of therapy?
Yes.
Even though
boy.
it's clearly a confessional?
Yeah, I don't like that reading.
What is that?
Well, because he's the student counselor, so the student counselor can't be giving like taking religious confession. No, he's it's obviously a metaphor. It's obviously a symbolism, deep distrust of.
So this is what I like about readings. Is just I find this so engaging. Is like when a character is deliberately presented to be not a good person, right? In just some way, and like objectively, you're not meant to relate to that character's values in some way, and then like, how does the person consuming that deal with that? And Utena is full of these types of characters, of Togas and Akios, and all of these people that do not abuse or they abuse power, and they treat people poorly, and just like how willing you are as the viewer to understand that the piece of media is deliberately trying to make you upset or present you with a character that does not have laudable values, and they may sometimes win or gain an advantage or something like that. I think Utena is the big litmus test for that.
Yeah.
And I think throughout this reading, and this is just one example of where he just like he fails it pretty hard of like enforcing his own values onto the show.
Or case modernity, by the way. Prominent in postmodern writing are unreliable narrators, imagery of mirrors, masks, being trapped in liminal spaces, a use of glitter to describe seemingly important things of little value, and a strong prominence of feminist ideals and themes.
What?
Okay, I have absolute. Okay, my background in postmodernism.
I was gonna let Richard take this one.
I have no idea what he's talking about when he says glitter.
What is that?
I don't know what he's talking about.
You know what? A foundational postmodern text.
It's like glitter symbolizes.
The foundational postmodern text of the murder of Roger Ackroyd. Like, what do you mean unreliable? Like, unreliable narrators can be a component of like, but it's like that's like, it's not necessarily a component of postmodern literature.
We've established that we do not align with whatever the writer of this piece thinks that postmodernity is.
Yeah,
that's an example of that.
Maybe they should have read the Wikipedia page.
Given that postmodernism, not to be confused with postmodernity, which is a different thing, kind of, seems to hold a particular focus on the appearance versus reality of something, and also challenging the belief of objective truth. Second wave feminism felt
what was it?
He's about to make another really, again, now here's the thing though, right? If you don't know anything about postmodernism except maybe what you've kind of heard through the zeitgeist, which is like, oh, it was like weird. It's weird for the sake of weird, to quote Mosislak.
I've listened to Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, right. And he's going to lean into that. So he has this strangely, again, because he's going for the Wikipedia page. Wikipedia page has a very kind of conservative, like it was written by someone who was not a sympathetic to writers like Lyotard or Foucault. What he's about to say next is, again, he's going to start talking about second wave feminism. Now, postmodern feminism arose as a response, by and large, to second wave feminism. And arguably, this is the third wave is the postmodern. There's some nuances between third wave feminism and postmodern feminism, but there's a significant enough overlap because a third wave or postmodern feminism talks about things like gender being a social construct as opposed to being biological reality, and
of course,
and you have a lot of feminist writers who are second wave or don't necessarily jive with what specific place themselves in waves, who are very critical. And second wave feminists were very critical of postmodernists, people like Judith Butler. Lots of second wave feminists do not like Judith Butler because Judith Butler was like, gender's a social construct, everybody.
Right.
But he kind of doesn't know that, so he's going to start talking about the parallels. And I mean, there were some parallels.
Oh, hello.
Well, as postmodern. Oh, you lose me.
No,
either you cut out or I cut out. I think you cut out because I'm not showing any drop frames.
There are some parallels between the two of them, but they're very. They're like they developed simultaneously, but not. I would say they were.
Yeah, liminal space is mentioned. I mean, the quintessential, big examples of like liminal spaces, especially when it comes to like coming of age stories. I think of like Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, probably like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, stuff like that. I'm like, are those really postmodern works? What did Alice in Wonderland come out in the 1800s, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand.
Felt very at home when postmodern thought
is woke because the mangaka woke up and made
its way into literature. By the 1960s, the two could often be spoken of in the same breath. They both drew roots from the rise of existentialist thought that endured the Second World War.
Wait, hold on.
They made its way into literature of objective truth. Second wave feminism felt very at home when postmodern and also challenging the belief.
Why did his camera flip here?
Lazy cinematography
Of objective truth. Second wave
I don't understand why this
feminism felt very at home when postmodern thought made its way into literature. By the 1960s, the two could often be spoken of in the same breath. They both drew roots from the rise of existentialist thought that endured the Second World War, spurred by an intellectual school of thought that placed importance on the self, and developing a sense of self-worth based on action rather than birthright or strictly through labor. Also unfortunate is that existentialism was a primary influence for Ayn Rand and her school of objectivism. Still an ongoing trend within stories with a female lead.
Yeah, I don't.
Was that in order to frame the narrative towards emotional validation, the narrative needed to contain the typical postmodern elements of social destabilization, which leads us back to Utena.
One of my favorite postmodern thinkers when it comes to social destabilization. Have you guys heard of Karl Marx?
No, I've never heard that guy.
Postmodern thinker.
You're doing a different reading of Utena.
Oh god,
one that I'd like to read.
The camera flipped because mirrors are postmodern. I swear to God, if that's the rationale.
So yeah, this
where mirrors largely emerged out of like Lacan, and he does get thrown in with postmodernism, but again, like
you need to have such a nuanced understanding of this, Richard, and it seems like you have the guy reading the newspaper article, right, where you're the expert in one thing, and then you're like
the Gellman's amnesia kind of thing.
Yes, yeah. Gellman's amnesia.
That's what it's called. Yeah,
we talked about that in the last stream as well. What a useful concept.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at on this whole paragraph of like tying in the female lead towards emotional validation and then relating that to social destabilization. It's like that sounds very, female empowerment. I don't know how that relates to second wave feminism and third wave postmodern feminism. I'm not. It's not my area of study. But I'm like trying to square the circle on where he's going with this, and I'm not entirely sure.
Third
I
stream in a
think
row.
it will eventually make sense when he does get there, like what his angle is.
Yeah.
All right, I guess we just got to trudge through.
Where the very plot is about revolution, and whether or not a tomboyish young girl has the ability or the right to be responsible for it. But you're here for the hot takes, right? What does this have to do with that? Throughout Utena, there is...
All right, so we're finally at the hot takes, ladies and gentlemen. We've arrived at the station.
both an element of magic realism juxtaposed against the reality of high school drama. In spite of the fact that these are high school students, they fight grand fencing duels in a stadium in the sky where an inverted castle floats above. The student council has this anxious anticipation about their ability to self-actualize, and anxieties about growing up, while at the same time carrying the kind of weight and authority one would expect from feudal politics. It's like Game of Thrones with miniskirts. In my reading of Utena, there is very...
Every time it's a joke, I just... a little part of me dies.
A little part of me dies.
Look, having your entire catalog exposed for being a massive plagiarist and fraud is easy. Comedy is hard.
Comedy is hard.
little that we can verifiably say is not symbolic or directly allegorical of something. This anime incorporates nearly every significant icon of postmodern language. It would be wrong to assume that this is not deeply allegorical. What are we just going to take
mean?
I'm like,
what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Stuff seriously when it serves the plot much more significantly, to say that the background mythology is meant to characterize the way these characters interact? My reading of this media is that there isn't a whole lot we can take at face value, and much more that we can assume is fantastical illusion meant to
keep it going, son. Let the man finish. Come on.
Convey deeper meaning about what the author has to say about power, abuse, control, schooling, and adolescence in general.
Chat. Well done, Gabriel. Right done. Well done.
This is just going to be something I just want to address real quick, which is that it can be both. There isn't a hard dichotomy between allegorical and literal. You can read things both ways essentially.
Right. And it seems like he's like grappling with that context, or the writer of this video.
Because
it's like I don't know. When I watch Utena, it's so incredibly clear to me that Dios is a concept, like an idea, like he's saying, like an allegory for a perfect, immaculate conception of what a prince should be or what the characters think of.
Like the Joker in Suicide Squad, an idea.
I don't fucking know anything about Marvel comics.
An idea.
What was I gonna say before you brought in the fucking Joker? Yeah, so it's this all reads to me like somebody grappling with the idea that Dios doesn't actually exist as a person. And I'm here on having done a 4-hour video on Adolescence of Utena that's Dios with that interpretation in mind, and as the obvious level 1 layer of how we're going to interpret Dios and go from there. And I'm just this is the bomb drop. This is what we're going off of. All right. But then bringing in all the postmodernism to it is muddling it. It's it feels like you're considering themes to be postmodern, right? It feels like it's or symbols. Just the very
I guess the great example is that you can read this actually be topical. You could read Godzilla as being an allegory for anxieties regarding nuclear weapons, but that also does not mean that nothing in Godzilla makes a literal sense.
Yeah, or you're still feeling scared through the actual emotions of Godzilla terrorizing the city still come through. Yeah, totally. And I think Utena functions in much the same way. And I think for as much as he goes here, and this is where his reading contradicts itself, but he goes there on Dios. He's what if Dios is not actually what Akio was back in the past, literally. And then at the same time he's oh yeah, O3 Academy is still definitively a place, obviously. And I'm whoa, You just said everything was allegorical or symbolic
Yeah.
or something, and then we don't grant that to things like I think he mentions Wakaba later on in the thing, stuff like that too. You know, where when he rejects the movie and them riding on the Wakaba Jeep, the movie, and I'm like it's all yeah. If you're gonna say it's all an allegory, go on it. But it seems like you're you're kind of grappling with the first step in that, and you haven't like you've dipped your toes into allegorical characters and symbolism, and you haven't really explored why or what that means or what the broader implications are for other.
Right.
And
I think
and I
the
mean,
best thing about like Utena is that it gives you enough of like both where it could
Right.
go either way. And so it's like it's blending that like reality and dreamlike essence in a way where it's like what is like what am I supposed to be? What how am I supposed to take these things? It's supposed to be literal. It's supposed to be real. Like that's all part of like the dual kind of nature of the show. Like that's totally intentional.
Yeah, that's what Ikuni goes for in everything. And this is my reading of, knowing penguin drum and all that shit. But like child broiler is a metaphor. It's not an actual child broiler. What? Whoa, 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 whoa,
well, now the term gets used a lot, and I really like to use it, but this is like the postmodernism and the specific novelty. What people complain about when someone's being pretentious. Right? It's adding in a bunch of stuff that they're vaguely familiar with, but because it sounds neat and it's novel, we're going to include that because reasons.
Especially because the final 2 episodes strongly imply, even misleadingly, that everything fantastical about this story, from the duels, the castle, the power of Dios, was an illusion projected by holograms. Though, in the same breath where Akio...
Oh no, that's like the Evangelion thing where it's like, oh, the last 2 episodes mean it was all a dream.
It was all an illusion.
It was all an illusion. It's like, God damn
The
it.
food they were eating was all holograms.
If I can
Explains the
quote
people-
Harry Potter for a moment.
Okay, go off.
I'm not going to quote Harry Potter for a moment.
People see a castle because they're too naive to see the power of the chairman's residence. They see the more literal power of a castle. Akio doesn't seem to question himself at all, and whether or not the chairman's office is an illusion he is choosing to see. In a discourse on power, it's very heavily implied that the chairman's authority is representative of a broader definition of higher authority. Evidence of his own self-deception is that he too buys into the fantasy of the power of Dios, which seems to reside exclusively in this room of illusions. And therefore, where he failed to breach the door to that power with a sword he drew from Utena's chest, Utena accomplishes this all on her own. So if we are dealing with a plot,
now we're talking about swords.
You rubbing your hands together.
This is why we brought you on.
Oh yeah, baby. Okay, so now I may just be wrong, but I've consumed all of Utena's media, including having played a couple of campaigns with BESM, Utena roleplay. The sword that he pulls out of Utena isn't the sword of Dios. It's Utena's soul sword. I mean, I guess if his argument would be something like the soul sword transformed into the true sword of, which again, if it had been the true sword of Dios, should have been able to have broken the thing, right? And he keeps saying this, and it's like he never talks about the difference between like a soul sword or the sword of Dios, and that's kind of important.
Yeah, and that's all stuff you would find on Empty Movement, right? Like that's been talked about before, right? Definitely.
Yeah, but he also doesn't seem to understand that there's a difference.
Right.
Like he doesn't. Where was it? Sorry, I actually have a note somewhere. I'll get back to it. It's okay.
Well, can I say before we continue that my thought about this is that I don't much mind this point about Akio being a victim to buying into the own system. I think that's fine, and I talked a lot about that in adolescence too, because I think it comes up there that that Akio is as much victim in some ways as he is abuser, and buying into that system. I think that's a fine point, but like you said, it's not the stuff about the swords and all the symbolism, and you could do an entire half-hour video just about those last 2 episodes of Revolutionary Girl Utena and what that means.
Mhm.
Everything in there.
Yeah, I think where the undercutting of his own kind of narrative is that Accio, in if you're looking at the literal what's going on, Accio's scheme is to cultivate the duelists so that he can extract soul swords from people who could potentially be the true prince, so that he can open the sealed door, right?
Right. But to bring about revolution, you can't buy into the system that is prescribed in that way. That's not going to
Mhm.
be the action that causes you to revolutionize the world.
Exactly. The system can only reform itself. But
Yeah.
he takes that as being like he never addresses that. He's like, fails to break the seal with the sort of Dios, Utena's sword, but never talks about why the system exists as it is, kind of thing.
Hmm.
You're a rat in the cage, and you're unable to look at the structure surrounding you. One of the best things somebody ever told me is you can't tell people that their life has a skybox, and I think that applies to Akio in this sense.
Oh, I guess I should also just, if I'm not clear, I'm specific. Oh no, you know what it is? Never mind. This is a related point, but it's something about how he conceptualizes Utena's relationship with Akio. So we'll get back to that when it'll make more sense then, I think.
Yeah, we could nitpick this. I'm fine with this point about Akio. It's whatever.
That is primarily an illusion. Then how are we supposed to interpret what was going on at all? And more importantly, what does it all mean?
Okay, so I guess the structure of the video is now we've torn down the idea of like literal meaning in Utena, and now we need to replace it with like allegorical, symbolic meaning.
If you've said everything's an allegory, start
The weird
explaining
thing
every
about
little
an
symbol.
analysis like this is that you kind of have to gauge what this anime is actually about before you begin to look for supporting instances. Something tricky about Utena is that some things are allegorically coded and other things are meant to be taken at face value. It's not always clear which is meant to be which. A basic premise
I thought it was all allegorical. What?
is that Utena Tenju is a middle school student who is struggling to navigate adolescence. If we assume that this is real, as the more universal experience the young lady can expect in her life, then all elements
Oh, hello? Oh no.
Taken down.
Oh, we got canceled.
Rip.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yo, did we get canceled?
We get canceled? No, I think something just fucked up. Second, I thought my internet died. I was like, what the fuck?
Oh, I thought you were pausing because you wanted to look at the scenery in Adolescence of Utena, and I'm like,
Oh, no.
yeah, it's some really good art direction in that movie.
It does look pretty good.
Shut it down.
They're on to us.
If not, I have it like downloaded on my computer. I'll just open it up in like VLC or something. The hell? I'm not dropping frames or anything. It's not like my internet's dying. I don't understand what the problem is.
Open it up
throughout
on VLC.
Utena,
Oh,
there is
there we go.
both
Oh,
an
now
element
it's really
of
loud.
magic
God damn it.
realism juxtaposed against the reality of high school drama. In spite of the fact
All
that
right, let's
Killing
see.
everybody's eardrums.
my work would be assumed the one where very heavy village how for things are meant to be taken at face value. It's
There
not
we
always
go.
clear which is meant to be which. A basic premise is that Utena Tenju is a middle school student who is struggling to navigate adolescence. If we assume that this is real, as the more universal
get it.
experience the young lady can expect in her life, then
Yeah,
all
let's
elements
do that.
outside the realm of normal can be seen as symbolic reflections of struggles that middle school students will go through. Especially
now we're
because
gonna
all
get
discourse
demonetized.
around the duels and the Rose Bride and the floating castle in the sky are not accessible to most of the student body. Only the student council and a handful of students know about these things. The rest of the students are just students. This creates a broad yet clearly defined separation between the fantastical events and the literal ones. And this is also primarily why I prefer the anime to the movie. The separation between reality and illusion is a little bit more defined. Whereas in the movie, Adolescence of Utena, students participated in these duels as the audience. It makes the symbolism of everything around Anthe a little bit more literal, except when you get to the whole cars thing. That said, the movie was
Can we
much
pause
less
it here, because like there's a lot that he said here that I just like fundamentally disagree with on a reading of Utena. like just the reading on the students of how, yeah, you've talked about there's a separation between the student council and the duelists and the normal students. And then you don't go any further. You don't say what, well, if it is an allegory, what does that mean for the separation of the students? And why are the people in the student councils somewhat different? And I think that's one of the huge strengths of Adolescence of Utena. And you can go see my breakdown on my channel, because it literally puts the idea of the ring, the rose crest, and just like embodies that as like high goals. And I talk all about the path to leave Otri Academy and why these students have the student council has some element of awareness to do that, and why students like, the normal students aren't there yet. And like, so in this analysis, I'm like, yes, okay, you've determined that the being a duelist has some inherent meaning towards Revolutionary Girl Utena, but you haven't made a reading on what that is.
Mhm.
And it just makes me mad.
Is it that they took the red pill and woke up?
Eh.
Did they swallow misogyny and now they're aware?
Oh, we should be looking in this video for like subtle misogynistic stuff, right? That was one thing that H Bomber guy called out.
I think he's actually pretty good. Because his focus is on like misogynistic system, right? I don't remember calling out white women in this one. So
that's why I'm like, can you do a misogynistic reading of Revolutionary Girl Utena?
About the question.
Hell yeah. I hate women, and this is what I think about Utena.
See, Utena wants to become a prince because she doesn't want to be a woman.
Let's stop discussing women's rights. Let's discuss women's wrongs.
Of identity and more about escaping the oppressive elements of conformity in school.
Women's rights.
The movie itself, I view as more of a companion piece to the anime, beefing up secondary thematic messaging that was present in the anime and clarifying some character motivations. For instance, Toga's romantic feelings for Utena were genuine, and that Shiori really is just that bad. Though Utena's revamped design was a great improvement, I felt. Granted, the whole movie is just gorgeous, painting the school as an MC Escher-esque prison of militant conformity. It's also just a lot gayer. There's a reason why I chose to focus on the anime specifically. Both the film and the manga are worth their own analysis each. The only major overlapping symbol is that cars represent adulthood and passage into adulthood. A problem with postmodern analysis is that symbolic language and what is presented as real events can often be overlapping. An element of realism is important in most stories, as most audiences need these real events to identify within.
Richard, you going to respond?
I was going to say, I saw the cursor hovering. Most of my notes about from this point on are just basically like, what is he talking about? How is that postmodern? What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Well, if we've already started off on like an incorrect reading of postmodernism, then why would we expect the reading based on that incorrect assumption for what it is?
I just, again, I'm not even sure what he's trying to say. Like, I'm genuinely confused.
The only thing
these are meant to be his hot takes.
Yeah, and the only thing I got out of that like last paragraph is like, you don't like the movie for reasons, and then the car equals adulthood, and yeah, like that's like, a pretty milquetoast symbolism.
Like, where the hot take? Like, I feel like we're still laying the groundwork, the foundation for being like, okay, yeah, there are allegorical things in Utena. At which point it's like, yeah, no shit, I haven't even seen the show and I know that. So it's like, where are your hot takes? I'm freezing out here.
Because it basically sounds like he's basically trying to, because he says the problem with a postmodern reading or the postmodern approach is that you can't tell the difference between the literal and the symbolic, which what?
And so like if I were to clarify his own points for him, I would take that and I would run with that, and I would make an entire reading based on Grace and Glamour, which I literally have done and is one of my first essays and YouTube panels about like the simple everyday moments in Utena and the togetherness and the values, and then the glamour of the extreme circumstances and the fantasy that it is forced upon them. And I think that's what the idea is if I'm giving it a whole lot of credit.
in their own lives in order to empathize with the characters. There is a degree of uncertainty when gauging analysis, and the temptation to assume that everything is symbolic, which I feel gives a lot of undue complexity to work that is otherwise meant to just be straightforward. To bring up an example nobody
Okay, so he's like rolling back now. I guess the point he was trying to make earlier, which is that it's all like allegorical and symbolic. And he's like, no, it's not. And I'm like, but you just said
That was the fundamental like what do you call it? Internal irreconcilable kind of parsing of this video is that you said everything's allegorical, and then you say, well, it's a mixture of both.
yeah, which it's like it's not a hot take. That's just like the foundation to engage with the work.
nobody's gonna expect, and I mean nobody. Look at the music video for Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus. I do like Miley, but this one was a bit of a miss. She responded to criticism of the video, describing it as weird and unnecessary, by claiming that the whole licking the hammer thing was symbolic of a failed relationship, or something. A problem with the video is that it is under the assumption that the audience is going to read these visuals as symbolic, without the music video itself doing anything to suggest that these things are symbolic. The lyrics
What does that mean?
also don't do
How does it like suggest? How would you go about?
So
Is he trying to say that that's what Utena's doing?
yes.
Even though Utena literally
So,
starts
I
pointing
have-
this shit on
Yeah,
screen.
I was going to bring up the cats, right? The one point where it points to the cats, right? You remember that?
Beep, beep.
So the note that I had on this is that so he's from a school of media analysis. If the audience is supposed to read something symbolically, the text will prompt them to do
video
so.
itself doing anything to
That's wild. That's just a wild assumption to me. That blows my fucking mind.
Like the only way that you can read something symbolically is if the author has told you that has let you know, has given you some clue that this is, you have to read this symbolically. But he'll like all intentionalists do, he'll later go on to convict himself because he's going to be like, well, sometimes the writers can put stuff in there that they weren't even aware of.
suggest that these things are symbolic. The lyrics also don't do a whole lot to play off of the housebreaking imagery of a wrecking ball besides that one line. The end result is a weird sexual tryst with inanimate construction site objects, which seems to be playing off of nothing but the song. But that's a creator assuming that their audience will read symbolism into their work without prompt. It can work in the other direction too.
It's like, how do you prompt it? How do you then clue your audience in?
He's going to tell you how that happens.
I guess, and to Mumi's point earlier, like Utena literally does that. It literally does in sort of like a farcical, multiple warped postmodern, postmodern. I'm fucking okay. Shut up.
Taking Lord of the Rings as an example, and this is entirely hypothetical, it would be like saying that Aragorn kicking the orc helmet and crying out in anguish is symbolic of his rejection of regal responsibilities resulting in the suffering of those around him. No, he's kicking a helmet because he's frustrated that he's misplaced his hobbits, and screaming because Viggo Mortensen accidentally broke his foot kicking that helmet. Now, if the plot
Okay.
Richard, you
But-
got to go off on that. You got to go off on that. Come on.
But like the Peter Jackson shot that, decided to keep it in the film. So you can't just say that the literal genesis of that scene is the only valid interpretation of it.
Right. There's no reason it couldn't be as symbolic of his regal and responsibilities and hurting people around him. Why the fuck not? Can't I have that reading?
It's one of those things where it's like it can be both
Yeah.
simultaneously.
Exactly.
It
What?
doesn't need to invalidate either. What?
It's like when you read
Plot made-
fucking Lord of the Flies, and they're like talking about, the usage of colors, like evocative of like fascism and Nazi imagery and stuff, and being like, no, it's just they're using charcoal and
No,
blood.
the
It has
curtains are
nothing to do with the colors.
curtains are just blue,
nah.
dog.
Because what that also means is that like if you watch the Lord of the Rings film and like you wouldn't necessarily like that's one of those like Apocrypha, everyone knows. It's a well-known fact that Viggo Mortensen broke his toe in that scene.
Right.
But like when you're sitting there in the theater in 2001 watching that 2002 watching that movie, what was it 2001 watching that movie, and you see that scene, you have absolutely no context whatsoever outside of the narrative you're watching. That only makes sense when you're watching it 20 odd years later and you know that tidbit. So
Yeah.
what are you talking about?
So, Sai, you also mentioned the curtains are blue, and that's like this exact argument, right? Well, my
Yeah.
panel I gave at Otakon this year, I literally started. You were there, right? You saw
I
my
was there,
panel at
yeah.
Otakon. Oh my
Yeah.
god! So yeah, that's exactly why I started with this, and I think like there's a lot of people that don't have a basis in media criticism in our generation and millennials and later younger, but I think that's the ability to just sit here and be like, no, it's obviously not this reading, or it doesn't have that intent, or it couldn't have that intent, is just something that I see over and over again, and it's something I hate because like there's nothing that precludes that reading of Viggo Mortensen's actions in that scene of Lord of the Rings from being legitimate.
Yeah.
There's no
Apart from
like
just being like, I don't like it.
yeah, like somebody made an arbiter, and it's not like saying there's a difference between rejecting that reading and saying I don't think the evidence in that scene supports that reading, or
Right.
or it doesn't match up with other things or Aragorn's character or something, but that particular reading does, you know.
It'd be more sensible to be like, oh yeah, no, he just kicked the helmet because he likes soccer.
Yeah.
It's like,
and it could be that too, like that would be one where I'd be like, I don't know, do you have any evidence to support
like,
the
what
fact
the
that
hell
Viggo
is your
Mortensen really
rationale
likes
for
soccer?
that? Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I
like,
don't know.
I'm like, I don't know them. Like what he just said, the point that he just made to like immediately dismiss him, like, I don't know, that sounds fine to me.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't like, outlandish enough of a point to illustrate what you're going for.
If you're gonna make an objection to the crack readings or the crazy readings, at least use one that's less believable and understandable.
God damn it.
Yeah. I once heard the thing that Evangelion was about pack dynamics, like wolves, like feral wolf pack dynamics. And I was like, fuck, man, because that's one of those that I would never think about. But I think about that, it's like I don't know. This just gets my goat. Saying somebody's reading is obviously wrong. Like, what?
At a specific point of Aragorn repeatedly kicking or pushing objects away from him with due consequences, then yes, we could say that this action carries symbolic weight, but only if it's repeated, and only if through.
Why?
I grant that, yes,
arbitrary,
right? Repeating something.
How many times does it need to be repeated?
Symbolic weight, right? Like it does give it more symbolic weight if you do repeat it. That is true. That is a fundamental thing of storytelling and visual narrative medium. But it doesn't mean that it does.
It's necessary.
You can't go in reverse. You can't.
Prerequisite. How many times does it need to be repeated, James?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
twice, 3 times, 4.
Yeah.
Through repetition, the audience can see evolution in Aragorn's internal conflict. And unfortunately, there aren't any solid rules about when we should observe an action or element as symbolic, and when we should dismiss it as taken for granted. Because if you want to establish a rule, then some author at some point in history has made a masterpiece textbook example of a symbolic device that breaks that rule. The primary reason—
I don't know why that zoom was like shaking.
I'm not going to give you a single example or evidence.
I will not give a single example,
bro.
Just trust me.
I will not be taking questions.
that AI will never be able to replace artists is because the collection of values that are used to present literary devices can shift from one artist to the next. It's a matter of merit to have the kind of creative judgment to discern how an audience will interpret literary devices. And in the language of each individual author, there is a variable ability to present meaning in variable ways, using variable methods. TLDR.
What is this editing? It's like, yeah, you're just saying trivial things. Yeah, different storytellers have different like ways to tell stories. That's all you're saying.
Nothing. You literally said nothing, right?
He also, again, this is again just more evidence he doesn't know anything. He doesn't quite grasp like the postmodern, because one of the things again, I'll go Baudrillard here. Not that he's a postmodernist, but bumped into them. Is that when he was writing about art in the 1970s, he was talking about. I mean, um, like Benjamin, who's writing
Mhm.
about the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction, where he's talking about this process already taking place. So one of the, if you want to have like a postmodern criticism about AI art, as an example, would be that people are now only like, well, now all art is being reduced to nothing because it's just scraping what already exists. That argument was made 70 years ago at this point by someone like Benjamin, who's talking about art being able to be reproduced en masse.
Mhm.
So it's a different scale, it's a different thing, but that would be like an interesting take to have. Um, but if again he had have known about things about postmodern,
You
about
need to
like
be
the
familiar with
things like the
Walter
image,
Benjamin.
he would know that that's actually an argument that's been made about art by people who are lumped as postmodernists.
Yes.
And
No, we've just read the Wikipedia page for postmodernism.
Also, I have a whole fucking rant. Now's not the time or place. We've been going for a while about AI art and but just to summarize it very quickly, it's like the height of hubris to think that the AI wouldn't understand themes or like symbolism. Like what the
How do you think people understand those things? They get
Yeah.
told it over and over. It gets repeated.
It only exists if they repeat it at least like 3 times, though. You have to have
It's
you have to
called
show the
right,
evolution.
right.
But like it's weird that he's making this point immediately following the point where he's like, "Oh no, it has to be intentionally put in there. You can't make this reading if like I can give you a literal reason why it exists in the film outside of that reading, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
it's like the whole point of like what like differentiates like AI art from like human art is like expression, right? Like you can express things as an individual that aren't like conscious and like on a subconscious level that AI is not going to have because AI is not doing things unconsciously or subconsciously. It's not replicating visuals based on like a feeling. It's just doing it based on visual data, information, right? So the fact that he's like trying to make this distinction between the two after he just basically like wrote off like part of the whole fucking thing about like what differentiates like human art from AI art is like kind of bizarre. Like that's
Yeah,
kind of
it
the
is.
point is that you can impose or like some kind of get across like these emotions and like feelings and themes that are kind of universal to a human experience based on just like things that are unconscious to you. Like the
Mhm.
whole fucking like we were just talking about the fucking him kicking the helmet. Like that could be a rejection of whatever the fuck. Like that
Yeah.
could have been subconsciously left in the film.
Right.
Like, oh
Right.
yeah, this is like a good part for him to do that because like this is him really questioning his quest or whatever the fuck, like whatever the fuck reading you want to make. Like
Yeah.
that would be totally valid. And that's something that you can only have with fucking people doing it. Because otherwise, then it is just AI art. And then it has to be like completely intentional and completely done like on a conscious level. Because that's not how AI doesn't operate on that level.
All right, you're. I wouldn't join you on that whole thing of AI.
This is not an
Um,
AI
well,
stream.
no, this is like I don't know. I think about this as my hobby for my thing, and I've read a little bit of Baudrillard. I've read a little bit of Barthes and everything. Right? I'm not a scholar of any uh, by any stretch of the imagination, but I understand, and I've given panels on like the doing a reading on a piece of media and like intentionality in art and where that comes from and what it the intersection between the artist and the consumer. And I think I have my own thoughts on that I've come to over my own uh struggles, I guess you want to say, of making content and thinking about art in this way for over a decade or more now. um and to me this seems like stuff that you would kind of, if you were a real media critic, you would kind of like have either told to you in that type of like academia angle or have read it on your own or something, or at least come to it on your own by your own devices throughout understanding and reading different interpretations of media and chewing on where does authorial intent intersect with what the reader takes from your media. And it just strikes me as like nascent, I guess, in your criticism journey to say something to get caught up in all of this of like, yeah, no, that can't be.
Mhm.
Or that intent can't be in there, or that reading can't be drawn out of that for that reason, etc., etc.
If there's a rule, then it would not be art. The quality of an artist is gauged by their ability not only to make their own rules, but to efficiently project that set of rules to their audience. We live in a world where Watchmen, Carrie, Slaughterhouse-5, and The Color Purple are all considered postmodern masterpieces. Yet, their syntactic mechanics, narrative structure, and even their very underlying philosophies are foundationally different. Though in Utena, there seems to be one side character who is able to appropriately frame the realism from the symbolism, though she's in less than about half of the total episodes. Utena's best friend, Wakaba, is the most important character for discerning what is meant to be symbolic. Wakaba is a regular girl who's
a little incredibly gay,
and not at all involved
What?
in the component of dueling that takes place.
Yeah, I don't follow him down this line of
What?
thought about Wakaba. Like, this is what I would call a unsupported reading of Wakaba.
You mean the
Um,
character that literally confesses to a guy in the first fucking episode?
Yeah.
The impetus for the whole fucking show? That Wakaba?
Have you
Yeah.
considered that she playfully jumps on Utena and says that she wants to marry her? Have you considered that, and that she's being very literal? The literal character is being literal.
Ah, yes.
Mm.
Mm.
You're not allowed to like horseplay and be affectionate with your friends.
What
No.
was that? What was
Be
that thing in like the Lycurus Recoil video? And it's like normalize, normalize kissing the homies
Normalize
goodnight.
Picking up your friends.
Place in
It
the
ain't
school.
gay.
Wakaba sees conflict between the duelists, but not the duels themselves. She's the cipher character with whom the audience can appreciate what the average student would see. I would argue that whatever Wakaba sees is what the audience can take for granted is the reality of what's transpiring. Everything else, including very
I would push
personal
back on that.
moments, such as
I would say
Anthony's
this show is very focalized through Utena and not through Wakaba.
Didn't Wakaba see the fucking elephant surfing at one point?
Does she? Is she involved in that? I think that's most Nanami.
Well, it is
Um,
not to me, but I feel like that happened like where she would have seen it at one point.
I think this was an attempted reading of like why is Wakaba different from all the duelists, and it kind of like just wildly flew off the rails and went into like, oh yeah, Wakaba is he's trying to associate Wakaba with that type of everyday normalcy and not the fantasy glamour that the show inhabits. And in some way I'm like half tempted to be like, okay, if that's what you're saying. I don't know that the show does that much to engage with that. Like Wakaba shows up in a fucking duel in the Black Rose arc. Like that happens, right? I mean,
Yeah,
he
and
accounts for it.
he does, and but again, yeah, it's I think it's a not again. This is why I don't think they can just like. I honestly, I guess, as I said at the beginning of the video, I don't really like just dunking on things, even though that's largely
Right.
what we've kind of been engaged in.
Right.
But I think we are giving it, we're interrogating this video, its arguments, and it drawing out conclusions from it. So yeah, I'm in agreement. I think that kind of like trying to make it a case where what did Wakaba see? Was Wakaba's POV throughout this entire endeavor is going to give you a distinctly different perspective from the duelist Utena and so on because you're from outside, and that would be a really interesting a reading.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, there's plenty of normal scenes that don't include Wakaba that I would categorize as simple grace scenes and don't have any fantasy to them and would be what he's trying to equate with Wakaba.
I guess he's saying you can take all the scenes that she's in with for granted as being literal, though. I guess that doesn't mutually exclude any scene that
Yeah.
she's not in.
Doesn't go the other way.
And this is also the point that I think was directly like this specific scene, the imagery he's showing is specifically like directly contradictory to your reading as well.
Oh yeah, this anti-suicide scene.
Yeah, because he's like those are 100% symbolic.
However, I do. If we judge by is anything symbolic, if it has to be an abstract reading, if it's presented twice, this is presented twice, once in the series and once in the film. So he's got me
Why?
there.
Why is this symbolic exactly? Like, there's nothing about the scene that's like, oh, this could have actually happened.
I think he comes around to talking about it when he starts interrogating that scene.
Let's play.
Attempted unaliving, and even including things that happen in the real world, such as a school teacher sexually exploiting his female students, can be read as symbolic representations of something more abstract. And even if we do read those aforementioned issues as real, that doesn't also mean that
we're doing like the backwards thing now, where we're reading things that are grounded as representations of more abstract concepts, rather than the typical usual way of doing it, which you have like abstract things in like a story that are meant to represent something more grounded.
Well, that's what you do with Utena, right? All the innocent seeming things are all actually perverse and sexualized. All the sexual things are actually innocent.
Huh.
So it makes sense that you would do that.
Postmodernism, baby.
that they can't carry additional symbolic value to a larger abstract concept. They're just very well developed concepts. And because of Wakaba, we can approach them with uncertainty rather than confusion. This is the principle of my thoughts on Attack on Titan, where I felt that things that fans and detractors argued were symbolic were just too messy and inconsistent and contradictory to be set in stone allegories. Okay, this is a world where people can get bone marrow injections and turn into giant monsters who, depending on the circumstances, may or may not have sentient reasoning based on an ambiguous rule of genetic heritage, but also magic too. At this point of anything goes world building, Attack on Titan goes out of its way to establish that weird shit happens in this world and can be accepted as fact rather than allegory. Whereas Revolutionary Girl Utena does not do that.
That kind of strikes me as just like, well, Attack on Titan is just poorly written, right?
Don't say that. Don't say that on stream. We can't. We're gonna get like a dozen hate comments now. Fuck. I'll cut this. I'll cut this out later.
I'll own that. I'll hold that L.
I'll bleep
Attack
it.
on Titan. The other thing I want to say was, that video was plagiarized, wasn't it? His view on Attack on Titan.
Oh, I forget what. Yes, yeah, that had like its own like section in the H Bomber Guy video, where there were a number of blog posts that he was basically pulling from, and did not cite sources or give any accreditation or anything like that. So now this video he's
referencing his plagiarized video ideas.
In his video, he's referencing his plagiarized video in a video that we're now assuming does not have much plagiarism in it. Is now making me question. It's like, well, we very well could be wrong.
Yeah.
Which is something you could accept about Utena, except for Wakaba, who yes, participates in one duel, but she was brainwashed and has no recollection of it. Wakaba is the element of normal in this cast. Things that happen in her awareness are certain. Wakaba is like us, the audience. We don't pull weaponry out of random people or have uncommon hair colors. I'm sorry, almost none of us are main characters in an anime. And therefore, what happens outside of Wakaba's awareness...
Wakaba. Like, I kind of get that, but taking to the extent where she's like, she's the focalized lens by which we view normalcy is like, I'm like, no, not at all.
And the thing is, like, he talks about it here, but then he doesn't. I don't think he really does anything with. Like, he never brings it up again. He never. He's like, and Wakaba sees this, so we know this, and.
Right, yeah. If you're gonna do a fucking reading of Utena where Wakaba is the central guiding principle of what is literal and what is figurative and what everything by that lens.
This should be the thing that you bring like you talk about up front, and that structures everything else that you have to say in the video.
Yeah, exactly.
That should be your thesis statement.
Yeah. If you're gonna, this talks about scope and doing a work of criticism. Yeah.
But no, we're like halfway through this video.
Is subject to discourse on truth or illusion. Because of Wakaba, we can read some of the more weird things in this plot as symbolic and not just absurd. Not that Utena doesn't have some absurd things, but even something seemingly benign and uselessly cute like Choo-Choo serves to help characterize Anthe as a sympathetic character who is earnest in her sensitivity rather than it being a front to help her brother groom girls at the school. Cares about animals is the tried and
Nope, and it died again.
Got any reading on Choo-Choo?
That's
never
not
heard
like
anybody come up with a good reading on Choo-Choo.
That's also like
Choo-Choo mentioned. Shout out to Hayden.
Not really an allegory. That's just a character's function within a story. That's like different.
Yeah. I don't have any problems with that statement that it makes Auntie look more sympathetic.
Hey, Mr.
Sure.
Oh. Are you fucking up?
As a simple brother groom girls at the school, the audience ought to empathize with a given character.
Okay, Mr. Mongoose, we're studying, so I'll have to see you later. Did you
Dub.
reading that mean old snake?
Jump scare.
I like
There's a
Utena,
lot
though.
more to
Utena
dig
does it.
into
Well,
than
Rachel Lillis
simple
says Utena's
symbology.
What? What was the point of the section? We're already moved on.
Yeah, right.
The things that are symbolic, and the things that are literal. And Wakaba lets us know that that's the case.
Who has
Waba's the
Who
arbiter.
has the most W gotten?
It's like the melancholy
I
of
think we're all too
Suzumiya.
old to understand what that question is.
Wakaba's the true main character. Anyway.
Hayden, I'm 40.
It's always the sign of a good video essay when you leave a section with more questions than answers about
Yeah,
what they
right.
were talking about.
Right.
Probably the most prominent symbol in the entire show is the Sword of Dios. Aside from being the key that gives access to the power of revolution, it is made symbolic by how it is acquired. It being removed from Anthe's chest can be read as symbolic.
It's a reference to Guilty Crown.
I just like the idea that pulling a sword out of somebody's chest can be symbolic instead of literal when you pull swords out of people's chests.
The Sword
of Dios? Is that a fucking JoJo reference?
Oh god.
Rather than your average magical girl transformation stock footage. It's very
back at
easy
Magical
in
Girl
any
reading.
work of fiction to observe weapons as symbols of power. This is almost universal. What's a little more creative is when a creator questions what a weapon is. So given that a small yet significant collection of the student body run around spontaneously pulling swords out of their chesticles, this isn't something that we can really dismiss. The power to revolutionize the world is hidden behind a gate for which the Sword of Dios is the key to access. In order to get this power, duelists, usually men, need to extract this power from the body of a woman. However, they do not possess this power on their own. They need a woman as an accessory to their ambitions.
No, they
even if
don't.
the ambition is to protect.
Yeah.
What's up?
They don't, because if that was the case, all of the duelists would be ladies. They wouldn't be guys too. So what would have happened if, there's no one like Akio is clearly trying to seduces both men and women. It just happens to contradict his reading, but if the Black Rose arc is supposed to be evidence of one of the cases of someone who's was a failed duelist, then it was a dude. He can pull swords out of guys too. Guys get swords pulled out of them.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead.
yeah, and so he's
There's
kind of so caught up in his reading of the specific reading of Utena, and Utena and Akio's relationship, and Auntie fits into that he's disregarding very, very basic elements of how the world works, sort of how the world is set up to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no reason to force gender into that aspect of. I would say all the duelists could produce a sword. Yes, I would agree with that. The other thing that I want to very quickly mention is that he jumped into magical girls and mentioned weapons, and then didn't go any further on what giving a magical girl a sword means for anything like that. And I wouldn't expect them to have thought about it as much as I literally have when I'm talking about Sayaka Miki manifesting a sword in Madoka Magica, and or Hugto Pretty Cure when they have the sword of the Precure, and why is that transgressive on the genre norms and everything like that? It's I just shout at it oh yeah, a weapon is power, and I'm like, yeah, but it's a
birds.
Go ahead.
No, sweet.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a more personal thing because I've talked about it so much.
The woman. Granted, it probably should not get lost on us that Dios means God in Latin and a number of other Romance languages. Even in the Japanese language versions, he's called Dios, and I'm not going to get too deep into that, especially with the language of apocalypse and revolution. That's a whole master's degree dissertation right there. However, the figure of Dios as a
I don't know if there's enough there, to be honest.
got nothing to
character
say.
is important to the plot, and in my opinion, a rather contentious one. A surface-level reading of Dios is that he is either a god, a reflection of a god, a prince who died ages ago, or a collection of household insects given material form by Anthe, depending on the version of your story. Now, yes, if you want to, you can look at him like that.
I haven't seen Utena. I don't know what to think about that.
It just goes back to the stuff we were talking about earlier.
And
about,
that
like,
who he
symbolism,
was is
like-
now a specter that resides in the sword and/or castle. He is the figure who gave Utena her signet ring and inspired her to become a prince. And he is not Akio, though can be read as and is occasionally a reflection of Akio. For all that Dios is approached with the language of the Christian god, Akio's name is derived from a Japanese character used in the name for Venus, the morning star, which is associated with Lucifer. Lucifer, which is, dare I say, a misappropriated name for Satan. Lucifer instead originally referred to a Persian god of the morning light. And Satan actually means the accuser, not the devil. He was God's prosecutor, not his enemy. Frenemies! But anyway, religion and anime, fun. So yes, the literal reading is there, but that's boring when there's so much symbolism afoot. Dios is simply more useful as a tool to explain the motivations of characters that do exist than as a character himself. When a character is a character, but
Fine.
like Dios is not a character. Yes, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
is not a character, but represents an internal character foil that pretends to their identity, that may be a figurative mask, but a mask nevertheless. So Dios doesn't exist, not strictly. He exists as a concept given a name.
Like Santa.
Damn, that's crazy, dog. Where are the hot takes? This just seems like you're just stating the obvious.
If like I literally hadn't said so much more on this exact idea myself like 5 years ago or whenever I talked about adolescence, I don't know,
Yeah.
like I would be more impressed maybe if I hadn't read this before. Like I'm not the first person to say it either, you know?
Yeah.
Like of course it's a concept related to the concept, the immaculate concept of the perfect prince. Like I don't know, that just seems like a starting point, not a bomb to drop.
The concept is nobility, chivalry, and power. The subject of nobility is also noteworthy in Utena. The Prince of Roses, as a concept, seems to hold a different meaning to each character. To Utena, the prince is the archetype of the nobility she wants to represent. One may even say a transition icon, if you want to adopt that reading of Utena. However, additional instances of castles, princesses, damsels,
When do they explain why Utena has pink hair and pronouns? Are there pronouns in Utena, guys? Can you please, as someone who hasn't seen Utena, are there any pronouns in Utena?
Yes.
I mean,
Damn,
Yeah.
Twoke.
Choo choo goes by choo choo.
well, there's no
Oh,
use
like a
of very,
train. Interesting.
masculine language.
Yeah, I mean that's
Resolve in
another reading of Utena, right? Of like how using the Japanese pronouns and what do you call it? Atashi and watashi and boku
Yeah, I
and all that
don't
jazz.
speak Japanese. I don't understand how
And
pronouns work in
I'm
Japanese.
sure somewhere along the line I've read those, and I'm sure if you go into Empty Movement, you could find a reading of Utena in that lens that'll probably give you a little more idea into that kind of how they present and how they think about themselves via gender identity.
Well, I think what's interesting about Utena is like she doesn't want to become like a male. She
Right.
just wants to be a symbol. Like
Right.
the prince is a symbol. It's not that she wants to be a guy.
Yes.
I think there's a nuance in that. I mean, there's definitely some like readings and stuff things you could take away from that, from like different viewpoints and stuff like that. But I think there's a nuance there that gets kind of lost when you're just kind of like simplifying it to like, oh, she's just supposed to be trans, and like
Right.
not necessarily like examining the nuance. Like, I mean, that's
Right,
definitely a reading, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I talk about the like feminist angles in my adolescence breakdown. I think it's the second video when I talk about like if you are a girl who beats the guys at their game and you're like a badass, like girls can be guys to or be better than guys, like that type of thing.
Mhm.
And I think I even go further with that idea to like say that that's a red herring in how you are supposed to interpret Utena, because Jury is the foil for that, right? She's the person that shows you that reading doesn't function because she is someone who operates in the same space, but not to the same ends. And there's something more than just girl power, rah rah rah, happening in Utena. And I think to even yeah, that's used as a um, mis to mislead you almost. But again, go listen to my videos if you want to hear more about that.
And if you're interested in reading, there's a really good essay by a scholar named Jacqueline Ristola in a collection called Representation is the Universe. The entire chapter is on Utena. It's called Globalizing Fandoms. For Kunihiko Iguhara to Rebecca Sugar talks about a lot of those themes in a really interesting way, looking at maturities and what the show represents, and not just its influence to TV news, because it's actually an examining the show.
What was it called?
Good essay.
What was the essay called?
Bear with me. I'll just open my book back. Globalizing Fandoms, Envisioning Queer Futures.
Isher guy said, I don't think that the Lucifer is a Persian god thing is correct.
Oh, is that wrong too? That's funny.
Here we go. Envisioning. Yeah, here's
the book. The book might be expensive. I got it on one of like Springer's like.
The chapter itself. Yeah, I don't know. You could probably like find it.
Yeah,
there are places you could find it, but it's a really good. It's a good essay.
Yeah, and this just goes back to what we were saying earlier. That like literally everything in this video is stuff we've heard before and has been said so much better and so much more completely by people who know how to, do a work of criticism.
Right. Let's continue, I guess.
Witches also enrich this symbolic language. The castle may be an illusion. Kind of. Akio says it is, but then hinges his entire plan on breaking open an illusion door, so... I don't know.
What was the point of the section, my man?
Great conclusion.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't understand this video's structure. What's its thesis statement? What is the real revolution of Utena?
See, if you really understood postmodernism, then you would understand the structure of this video.
God damn it.
What I'm I don't know if it is a kind of like a reverse Gelman analogy that I like know a lot about everything he's talking about. So that's why I'm this critical of this video. But like he was known, like his channel got as big as it did, and he got the Patreon did it because people were like watching this and being like, this is like the pinnacle of video essays. I wish every video essay out there was like that.
Fuck.
I don't think this is a particularly good video essay.
Yeah, this is emblematic of the rest of his content.
Aside.
Yeah, just the form of this video essay is it's overly long, unclear in multiple places, padded with stuff that just doesn't make sense. The first bit is just a recap from Wikipedia. Like, yes, it's a poor video essay as formal video essay.
The castle itself represents a curious element of the story's politics on gender. The final leg of the third arc heavily deals with Akio attempting to convince Utena to put down the sword and be a proper lady, which Utena feels compelled to do. Nearly everyone who sees the upside-down castle wants to go there to make all their dreams come true, whatever those dreams may be. It makes it easy for...
This was it. This makes absolutely... His reading of this makes absolutely no sense for the events that happen.
Okay.
Because the whole scheme he has is to groom Utena to be the perfect prince, so that he can pull a fully realized soul sword out of her to replicate the sword of Dios, if we're sticking with his reading, to open up this door. Him trying to feminize her, to not have her do that, is a complete contradiction of what's going on. Even if you read it symbolically and allegorically, it contradicts itself very, very clearly. He's acting at cross purpose.
And I think it misses the larger themes of what Akio functions as in the story, and him performing the actions that society would expect to be from a prince or somebody manipulating power in that way, of the philandering and the abuse of power and everything like that. And just Somerton just doesn't get there on this reading of Akio, and I think a lot of I don't blame him though, because a lot of Utena readings that I've seen don't get to like Akio is in some way trapped or is in some way a victim to the system just as much as everyone else. And I don't think that's a very popular reading in Utena because people don't want to give Akio any sympathy, which is understandable. But like
Akio
that's what the movie does better too, I think, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
to manipulate
start, like,
others on
Doing the reading of like the the ego and the id and all that. Isn't that basically what that is implying? Is that Akio is like a part, like victim of this system just as much as like the other two parts?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't put it in that context, movie, but that's good. I like it. Keep going. Write it out and put it in a video essay, and I'll watch it.
under the promise that he can make those dreams a reality. What's noteworthy is that the castle is tantalizing, but it's also inaccessible. It is, in fact, only accessible through engagement to the Rose Bride. The reality of this castle is challenged by two things. First, yes, that Akio claims that it's an illusion within an illusion, one could say, very Inception-y, but also that it is upside down. We know from the study of symbols that when a given symbol is inverted, it holds an opposing meaning. Take a castle. What does it represent? Monarchy, regality, nobility, safety, and fantasy. A castle as a symbol, if inverted, still carries those values, but instead becomes an ironic subversion of those values. It's the difference between saying a castle wall is meant to keep the bride safe, or maybe that it's meant to keep her imprisoned. An inverted castle says the latter. It's also significant that as Utena faces Akio in this climactic...
This all feels obvious.
Yeah, again, fine. Yeah, but
It's like,
not anything that's blowing my mind.
Yeah, we're not.
Yes,
again, it feels like
Anthony
we're
is
not breaking new
trapped.
ground here.
Yes.
This feels like stuff that would have been like talked about relatively like immediately after the show had come out, because it's like
Right.
so.
And then how do you
salient.
not get from Anthe is trapped to Anthe is trapped of her own making? Like, which is the next kind of like subtextual level that you have to kind of like think a little bit about to get at.
The confrontation, she begins to understand the ways that her childhood fantasies of princes and princesses have been used to manipulate her into being just a girl. Her realization is marked by the upside-down castle's collapse. The symbolic language of this castle is a bit different in adolescence of Utena. While it seems to be a grand, magnificent castle, it's actually a giant tank underneath, whose shifting wheels and treads form a labyrinth that one is not meant to escape. And in the movie, as in the anime, Akio is directly related to this castle and the princely figure of Dios. This becomes more significant through the third arc. To Akio, Dios uniquely represents...
Did you guys know the Flowers of Evil director did that scene in the film?
No.
Story.
Interesting.
You mean the same director as like
Mushishi?
and
Yeah, I forget his name.
He believes he is, and who he feels other people ought to see him as. An illusion he himself buys into so strongly that others also believe it. Dios's story is told several different ways by several different characters, and no story is entirely consistent. The common trend in his fable, however, is that he has a sister. He seeks a damsel in distress, and that he is tricked by a witch and imprisoned. All of these figures are Anthe at the same time. Dios's imprisonment and or death as a result of the witch's actions.
It's like, I don't know. There's nothing to respond here to. Is this just the rest of the video?
I don't know how much more of this that we have to go through or that you want to go through.
Yeah, because I'm not really interested in
midnight.
if the rest of the video is just going to be him stating what, even to me, someone who has not seen Utena, just feels like the obvious.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Like, I don't want to do too much of a disservice. Like, if you watch Revolutionary Girl Utena all the way through, you're going to know it's operating symbolically. And if you like the conceit that Anthe was the witch, right, and that she somehow imprisoned the concept of the prince because she needed it, like that's very core to Utena, and there's a lot of space to play around in there. But like getting there, I don't think is the revelation that Somerton thinks that it is. And I think that, yeah.
Didn't the show explicitly say that Anthe is the witch in the show?
And the film.
So it's just like, what? It's not like that's not something you're like coming to. That's just saying the show.
Right. You have to take it a step further and tell me what that means.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he does eventually get there. That's the I think like the last the last chapter, his concluding chapters, where he kind of brings it all together. He reveals the real.
We should
skip there. Let's skip to the end then. Let's go to the conclusion.
Rolls in their shirts. desperately
No,
that
there's
they
like
out
8
these
parts
things
of
they
it.
were ready,
Live.
but as an older certain law had been daughter until Seon as these adults made them Anthe because viable.
I think that was it. Shut up and
Convince her
drive.
to relinquish
Is
revolution
it? Is, yeah.
instead
Okay.
power. Really the most on pat
Because the bouquet is on fire.
mysterious and students
Symbolic.
and to help. And then the line to be
Oh, I see what you did there.
as indicated in an episode where Nanami's younger boyfriend desperately wants to be a grown-up so that he can interact with women the way that he sees older boys doing, there is a single line questioning when someone becomes an adult. The gang tosses around a few things that signify the kind of adulthood that they have in their mind, and one of them is driving a car. And then the third arc becomes all about
This kind
driving
of strikes me
cars,
as like,
where we see
oh, somebody did watch it. If you know that Black Rose arc or the what's his face, I forget his name, doesn't get the duel. So I don't know. That's why like another strike against plagiarism.
Akio basically grooming the student body into helping him indoctrinate Utena. These scenes can be read as an older man ushering high school students into adulthood, at times before they're ready, but also certainly on his terms and not theirs. Akio's depiction of adulthood is suave, mysterious, and sexy. Even though his promises seem to ring adulthood, there's an unspoken reminder that they are in his car. Even during the duels, where each respective pretender bride is driving around trying to vehicularly manslaughter Utena, they are in his car. They are not in their own cars. It's not until Seonji begins to question why Toga is letting himself be manipulated into being Akio's wingman that we see them in their own vehicle, with Toga driving Seonji. A scene we can read as these two young men breaking away from the patterns of manipulation and oppression that have been...
It's fine.
It's fine. So how's this tie together, I guess?
I keep going.
Okay.
established by the adults in their lives. And that isn't to say that either of these young men don't have a lot to make up for, but they have a better shot at doing the right thing while cutting their own path, rather than being under the tutelage of someone like Akio. This is doubled down on in the movie, where the student council members, including Seonji, appear at the end to help Anthe escape. So, what is revolution? In probably the most postmodern turn of events, that's never made clear. What exactly is this power that everyone wanted to use, abuse, and exploit?
Can we say that we jumped here? Like, we're doing the whole thing of like the cars are their own willpower.
Yeah, now we just feel like we're in a different. We're no longer talking about cars.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that was two good points about cars, and like, that's all you're gonna do. You're not gonna do the whole chase scene with the other people. It's a mistake to think you're the only person that could turn into a car. We're not gonna talk about Utena turning into a car. Like, we're not gonna draw these conclusions.
Transforming cars is that a JoJo reference?
Transformers.
It's weird because he's like, I'm not going to talk about the movie, and then he just keeps talking about the movie, but he never really talks about the movie. That's about as in depth as it gets into the movie.
What does it mean if the castle's a car? What does that mean? Come on.
Or women in general to get a hold of. What made all of this worth it? Especially because the power is found in a castle in the sky that is described as an illusion generated by a holographic machine, but described by a character who is routinely outlined as being unreliable. Akio, as aforementioned, was unable to access the power of revolution. And not because he didn't have the power of Dios, which he took from Utena after he had her stabbed in the back. He breaks the sword of Dios and revolution remains exclusively out of reach. This tracks thematically, because what, honestly, was Akio going to give himself with revolution that he didn't already have? His entire plot to bewitch Utena was just to try and convince her to relinquish revolution to him, but dodges the question whenever anyone asks him what he wants to do. Power for power's sake. He was already doing a bang-up job at finding a horde of people to ship his sister off to as the Rose Bride, but somehow his greatest desire and deepest anxiety stemmed from losing control of his sister, especially to another man. And I can't imagine the prospect of losing his sister to a woman is nothing short of emasculating. Is this a good place to mention that?
I don't follow this reading at all. I really don't think that the idea that Akio doesn't have a coherent wish, and that's the reason why he can't generate the power to revolutionize the world or like change the system he's in. I'm just like, I don't know how that equates, and I don't agree that there's any support for it in the show.
I mean, there's a reading here about the marginalized and keeping a boot on those that have, are not, don't have power. I don't think this is the one.
Right.
This is not the way, Chief.
Are you perhaps saying that what Akio represents is actually a false, raising a false working class consciousness and bourgeoisie structure?
I mean,
Oh,
I'm
he's
not
going
saying
Marx.
that. You already said it, so I don't have to. Say it.
Yeah,
That's right. Akio's a trot.
here's our Marxist Leninist reading.
honestly a better reading than the one he just gave us. So
Yeah.
Active rape is the most common form of sexual assault imposed on lesbians, asexuals, and trans
Wait,
men.
what? Whoa!
Hold on, wait, where did this come from? I unpaused
We
and I feel like
paused for 1 second. I think we like missed like 20 minutes of it.
Is
Well,
the
how did
Yeah.
we
short
get
of
here?
for
emasculating.
Sai, that does happen in Utena
Of
episode
losing
33.
his sister to a woman is nothing short of emasculating. Is this a good place to mention that corrective rape is the most common form of sexual assault imposed on lesbians, asexuals, and trans men? And it means exactly what it sounds like. And while he may express disappointment in Utena for not being able to bring revolution to the world, he's met with a nasty surprise that the key to his martyrdom is suddenly making decisions for herself, and worse yet, using that new power to leave him. So we, the audience, can easily interpret that as a victory.
I don't know if I. Well,
Hmm.
I don't know if I agree with like calling that.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, by the definition of consent, yes, it is technically the thing.
The corrective word is the one you have trouble with.
Yeah, well, the reading of it specifically, like, I don't have the problem of it calling it that, but like, I don't. It's weird that we're like putting it in that context. It's like, again, Utena's not really. I mean, it's not that it's like consensual because she can't consent. She's a child, but it's like, it's not that it's like forced upon her. Let's put it that, like, it's not something that's like not on the table for her as like a sexual preference, right? Like, it's weird that we're kind of like putting the reading to it of like corrective when it's not necessarily like for what. I mean,
Oh yeah, Akio very clearly doesn't go, "Oh, she likes women. I have to change that."
yeah, there's not like that. There's not that
There's
element.
no element
to
of
it.
it. There's no element of that. In fact, like it's not a thing.
So in Somerton's reading, there kind of is. And this gets back to this idea of Akio trying to feminize Utena. So Utena already represented this kind of like, anti-patriarchal, anti-establishment figure that was, clearly gay by being a boy. And so how do you fix that? You fix that by making her a girl, by feminizing her.
I would
And
kind
so
of push
this
back on
is
that. Go ahead.
so I'm just trying to my understanding of Somerton's point. I'm not saying I agree with it, but
Yeah,
just trying to
you're
explain
steel
it.
manning his argument. I get it.
Yeah, it is effectively that because everything's allegorical. This specific part's allegorical. So, and this kind of gets into his thesis about what Utena represents,
Yeah,
which is
fair.
basically the women, a new type of woman, because that's she's taking the best of men, best of women, best of ladies, and joining them together, kind of thing. I don't think he actually says that, but it's kind of implied. And she uses her power to teach other women, like Anthe. And this is going to get back. This is why I wanted to get to the last part, because the last part's where he kind of goes. He really leans into that allegorical reading. I don't think we've hit that yet, but this will come back. But effectively, that Utena is a figure who is there, who represents the overthrowing of the patriarchy, and that's accomplished through a certain way. And the way that Akio tries to push back against that is by having her pushed back into that gender role.
Right. So I'm not gonna say Revolutionary Girl Utena doesn't have this element of transgressive gender performance. It's like absolutely it does. And when you tie it back into the patriarchy and like but I believe it's more of an idea of like Akio does understand that Utena is transgressing in the thing, but it's not punitive in that way, or I don't think of it the actions that he takes in episode 33 as like, oh, she's not behaving as a woman, I am going to force her back into a woman's role. Although I think a lot of people do like to consume it in that way. Instead, I think it's more like she's he's performing the role or the actions that the prince would do on a powerful, beautiful woman, and he's expecting that to to you know create that type of thing where he can take advantage of her, or it's not in a direct, like, drawing this association between the direct transgression of Utna in the gender roles in this patriarchal society with the actions that he takes in episode 33. I don't think that's necessarily a one-to-one reading. And I understand for this it can be an association, or that Somerton's reading does associate it in that way. But I don't see it in that way.
Yeah, and again, I would say, again, from my own perspective, I think that this specific reading is severely undercut. This is why I think it's not a particularly good or interesting. Maybe perhaps this is a case where I could put a mental judgment on it. It's not a particularly good reading because it is so heavily contradicted by the text. Because again, this is the whole, going back to the whole thing about gender. His whole system exists to generate soul swords that he can use to open the door. And Utena was like his prize pony in this. So the idea that the only way that she can accomplish that is by developing the nobility of, or developing this noble spirit, so he can draw a sword out of, like, the strongest possible sword out of her. For him to then near the end of it be like, yeah, forget all that. You should be on my kind of thing. It's like completely contradicts that. So
Right, exactly.
Nevertheless.
Yes. Akio, in fact, part of what makes Utena interesting and so effective as as you say, a soul sword generator, or like the purity of her spirit, or whatever we want to kind of more conceptually call it, instead of just the surface level, what goes on in the actions, is that she does not care for gender performance roles and will transgress upon them. So it would kind of be ass backwards to kind of like force her back in or out of that makes her so unique and interesting and valuable to Akio in the first place.
Let's continue.
In spite of Utena's apparent defeat, that yes, she somehow did manage to use the power of revolution, and she used it in an impossible, selfless way. She liberated her best friend from a toxic power dynamic she had with her family. And for those who know, getting someone to abandon a toxic family environment, even if it is emotionally and psychologically damaging, is next to impossible. Many people who try to separate a friend from a toxic family end up having to abandon their friendship to protect their own mental health. Through a not-so-allegorical reading, we can say Utena did the same. That ultimately, in spite of her bravado and nobility, she had to throw in the towel. Anime can show teenagers saving the world from interdimensional vampires all at once. Presenting a story where a teenager can engage with deeply toxic authority figures without deep-seated emotional scars is always going to be more unrealistic. Anthy's final decision to leave the school and find Utena speaks to her acknowledgement that she has been a participant in this, and that she wants to make things right. This also echoes the final act of Adolescence of Utena, where she becomes the literal vehicle of Anthy's
so much
escape,
better in the film.
rather than the figurative vehicle in the anime. However, this is a postmodern reading, which means this isn't Utena, Anthy, and Akio, but a new wave of unconventional women, the suffering and victimhood of all women, and the patriarchal values that oppress women. Utena prophesies women and their struggle to...
Oh, and God damn it, stop doing this.
Because in this...
Only like a certain, like, portions of the video too. I don't understand why this is happening.
Gotta download more RAM. So.
Gotta download more RAM. Guys, anyone on Roblox know how I can download more RAM?
First off, you gotta go in your system
I
folder,
swear
delete
to
system
God.
32.
But a new wave of unconventional women, the
try
suffering
this.
and victimhood of all women, and the patriarchal values that oppress women. Utena prophesies women and their struggle to free themselves from victimhood, and how this uphill battle will have casualties. Because in this context, we can appropriately examine one of the more elusive concepts, eternity, which is spoken of frequently, but has even less elaboration than revolution does. Both eternity and revolution are said to exist in the upside-down castle. You'd think that eternity and the power of revolution would be contradictory things, and you'd be correct. Utena's hidden driving force through the entire plot is to reconnect with the prince who gave her the signet ring. It's implied that the prince, Akio, showed her something eternal, which she now seeks to attain. And Akio uses this to groom Utena into believing the eternal thing she seeks is a romance with her prince. But Akio was never the prince Utena was trying to find. It was her all along. The signet ring may have brought her...
God, what a twist. I thought we got out of the plot summary portion. Why don't we come back to this?
Closer to this prince. However, she was the prince she was looking for. Though, as more information is revealed to Utena, she remembers that, no, it was not a rose-scented embrace the prince showed her. He showed her the witch, frozen in time, bearing hateful swords in her body for all of eternity.
Junichi Sato did
and this is both
that
punishment and justice. This is how the world must be.
Kind of a masochist,
the witch,
isn't he?
Anthe, must bear this hatred. Utena sees this as injustice, and her vow to become a prince is not in honor of the prince who rescued her. Her bravado is not due to a pep talk from a handsome man. Her drive to become a prince, her will, her...
That music swell. He's like getting choked up on his own words and stuff. And it's like, I don't care. What's your point?
Let him look. Goddamn, we have 2 minutes left of this video.
This is his first time reading him. Okay.
Determination, her very driving motivation that she herself does not remember, is to free Anthe from the swords of men who somehow believe that all women are responsible for the suffering of the world, and that a woman's only contribution in this world is to endure suffering for the benefit of a man.
Hey, this show does sound pretty good.
Quest.
That's what he's saying in his head.
he's just thinking of like, I'm killing this right now.
Man, I might have to go watch this after this.
Keep going.
Like, I'm spitting bars right now.
Is not just to rescue Anthe, but to rescue all the damsels in distress, to rescue all women from suffering, by empowering them to rescue themselves.
Are we done?
Yeah, the rest of it's just all of the Patreons.
Okay, well, not anymore.
Hey,
actually, yeah, let's do like the all these people were giving him money, but not anymore.
Fuck,
Can
man,
we
I
give
gotta
Neff
open
in
a
the chat
Patreon.
for all of his Patreons?
Yeah, you gotta. Well, never mind. I was saying you gotta play like a funeral march or something, but that might be copyright. So let's not do that.
Richard, did you have something you wanted to say about his final take?
Yeah. So again, like this all. So his I guess we kind of skipped because we were kind of jumping back and forth. But the whole thing was that he's basically Anthe is representative of all women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which even that just like fundamental assumption, like in part, I get it. It's kind of like, yeah, there's plenty of women that are in that situation. I don't think he fully understands the extent of Anthe's situation. I do not think he gets Anthe on a fundamental level. But yes, Anthe can be representative for that. But I would say more all the students in Notary Academy. But anyway, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and like again, I don't think it's particularly good or compelling reason, again, because it's effectively, it's undercut by any number of things. And as I said, like he keeps going on about, and it's my hang up, but I'll deal with it. But like, because this is a postmod, like what? This is again, as symbolism is not postmodernist.
Yeah. It was postmodernist, QED, Anthe represents women. Like,
Yeah.
Fuck.
Damn, that's crazy.
So where I think this video was this endeavor, this interrogation of this video is because I do think that that his presentation and how he presents it, I think we end up skipping over some of it, but because we skip like the parts of like the beginning and the middle, maybe not the middle, but most of the beginning, it represents a specific way that people talk about anime.
Mm-hmm.
Where he doesn't go quite as far as being like, this is the one good anime.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't go that far, but he still spends a lot of time and a lot of his humor, the jokes that utterly failed to land, perhaps because we're not sympathetic to them, is just reflective of. I'd say it's at this point it's even a really outmoded perspective. Like, you know, anime's goofy, ha 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 ha.
Aha.
Yeah.
And yet he's, you know, this kind of was respected, doing quite well for himself, video essayist who's talked about anime before. And I just find that I find it really annoying that he spends all this time engaging with this text, this you know, deeply, quote unquote, right? Like he's clearly engaging with the text, regardless of what we feel about his readings. He is at least doing that.
Yeah.
But it's almost like this is one of those texts that's worth doing,
Right?
And
yeah.
if you know anime things,
You cut out, Richard.
We got him.
Got me.
They got
There we
him.
go. I think I kind of finished anyways. So.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where it's like Utena is one of the acceptable ones to quote unquote overthink, I guess. Had this been about, you know,
Darling in the Franxx?
what's Darling in the Franxx? Yeah, or I'm trying to think of like what's like a lesser quote unquote magical
Tenchi
girl
Muyo.
anime.
Cute. Tenchi Muyo is fantastic. Fuck
Had
you.
this been about like any Precure season, I feel like.
Fuck you, Precure. I'm done.
Well, I don't agree with that. I'm talking about like general like public perception.
Tenchi slander. Okay.
Why?
Precure slander.
I will not.
Damn it. You
I feel like they're just
motherfuckers.
not even listening to what we're saying.
No. So
You have
my point
insulted
is
me
like
deeply.
no, my
I'm
point is like
unsubbing
that
your
it's like not
Patreon.
like considered like socially acceptable to like overthink Precure because then you're being pretentious or something
Fuck, what am
stupid.
I doing
like
with my life?
Exactly. Well, that's like the
That was
thing.
the
It's
whole
like
point that I was building on with, and you're just you just focus on the fact I called out Tenchi and fucking.
Well, I mean, I guess the thing though is right. Like he already talked about how even good media, and he juxtaposed
Symphogear,
with
yeah.
Miley Cyrus video as like even the good media, you can still overthink it. You can inject meaning into it that's not there because you're not following the way that to understand symbolism.
Yeah, and it's like, what does that mean?
So I have a couple thoughts. First, to the two people in chat that suggested Shugo Chara and Symphogear, both have fuck you. Both like a large fuck you. to
No.
those guys.
We're not. No, like the point is like we're not saying that like these anime like shouldn't be analyzed or whatever. But I'm talking about like those aren't like the big like they're not like the prestigious anime when it comes to like general discourse.
They are considered. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
They're like lowbrow, quote unquote.
But that's even wrong. Like something like fucking Handshakers is like lowbrow. You were throwing out magical girl shows. Anyway, the idea that you're overreading Utena, but Utena allows it. I kind of had the opposite problem when considering his reading in this. Is that there were multiple times where I'm like, you didn't go far enough or come up with a good reading of the paths that you started down.
Yeah,
like you didn't take it far. You didn't think hard enough.
Oh yeah, it was like there was literally that point where it's like, oh, we're done here. It's like
exactly.
I thought we were getting onto something. We were building up like a thesis regarding that one character, and it's just like, nope, we're done. And it's like,
should put us back in hell, by the way.
Oh yeah, I guess I should put us back in hell since we're done with the video.
Yeah, I just had fundamental problems with.
There's a lot of weird
readings.
stuff in it, but then a lot of it's also just kind of like inconsequential and like duh.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it's plagiarized.
Yeah, but only from Wikipedia, so it's okay.
Only from Wikipedia, which that was so funny. That was so much fun reading through that, and then just like, oh my god, we could actually like see like the exact structure. That's fucking crazy.
At least, that's for the AI stuff. Just get ChatGPT to read the Wikipedia page and restate it for you. It's going to write a better essay than you wrote.
Yeah.
Please restate the Wikipedia page. I was deeply upset by the lack of hot takes in that whole video.
Yeah,
Right?
for real.
Give me
I feel
some
like
heat.
I feel like I went to like a restaurant that was run by white people, and they put like spicy on the menu, and like, they brought back fucking mayonnaise. God damn.
Here's your Sprite, and it's like, excuse me.
All right, so here's we'll get some hot takes, right? Okay, so Revolutionary Girl Utena. You always wondered like, why are they transforming into cars? Where are all these cars? So it has nothing to do about fucking like coming of age and like becoming an adolescent or whatever. It has nothing to do with that shit. It's fucking horseshit. Fuck, just forget about that. All right. What is the synonym? Not synonym. What is the definition of revolution? All right. You got like what? You got the fucking, I don't know, the fucking uprising, overcoming of established hegemonical fucking power or whatever the fuck. You also got revolutions, as in like, you know, turning of the wheel.
Oh.
Yeah. So
keep going.
They got cars, and they turn into cars because she is the revolutionary girl.
Oh.
Okay.
So revolution as in turning.
Because she's full of revolutions.
Now, can I grab that and can I take the steering wheel and drive you a little bit further down that road? Can we say, are you familiar with an anime called Wish Upon the Pleiades? You're right? You know who sponsored that? Subaru. Right?
Oh.
Okay. Utena, so many cars. Cars are the manifestation of agency, of power, of adulthood, right? They make them seem super cool. What do you want to do after you see Revolutionary Girl Utena?
There we go. As Is-Your Guy pointed out. Is-Your Guy pointed out in chat, what are cars the product of? That's right, the Industrial Revolution.
So she is in fact the result of the Industrial Revolution, and she is herself a revolutionary girl because she can turn into a car.
A material girl, if you will.
See, now we're really getting into fucking the core of the issue here. See, this is the kind of shit that he should have been getting into.
Yeah.
When he's like, I'm gonna fucking give you some takes you've never fucking heard before. You definitely have never read this on Wikipedia if you scroll down like 3 scroll wheels.
Yeah. Here's why
propaganda.
Here's why Utena is pro car dependent infrastructure.
Yeah, it's big auto. God.
Big auto.
Don't tell me that highway at the end of Adolescence of Utena does not look baller as fuck to drive upon.
Was there like any like car sponsorship tie-in with Utena at any point?
No, I just made that up. Even if the evidence isn't there, that doesn't mean you can discount my reading. Sigh.
No. But I'm just saying that'd be really funny if it was.
That would be funny. That would be really fun. Like it's F1 because of the
hell yeah.
It also explains why they have the rings. You know, rings are what are they? What are rings other than just wheels on your fingers, right? I mean,
oh shit! It's like they're married to their cars.
I actually had like an unironic, like similar kind of thing when it came to like Monogatari, where because in Monogatari, what's funny is like Araragi just walks everywhere, or he takes his bike, or later on he like has like a car and he's driving around, and I'm thinking to myself, why does this guy never take the fucking train? You live in Japan, one of the most robust public transit systems of all time. And then I remembered the last time he entered a train station, he was fucking traumatized. So I think my interpretation of that is Araragi, because of the events in Kizu, is now just afraid of going anywhere near a train station.
Yeah, fucking PTSD.
Yeah, he's like, fuck that shit. I'm not doing that ever again. Last time that happened, I had to deal with a whole like moral crisis. Well, we're now back in hell. We've watched the video. We've deconstructed the video, as Derrida would say.
Any final thoughts from anybody? Any imperative things that you need to share in regards to what we just watched, or Utena in whole?
If not, a new podcast episode should be up on YouTube tomorrow. It's already up on like regular podcast services, has been since like Thursday. Go take a listen to that. That was with that Kodacha girl. That was a pretty interesting conversation.
Please just hold up that picture that guy just sent.
What? Hold on.
Just
what?
put it in hell. The
Okay,
truly just encapsulates the hell that we just went through.
Let me oh, did Kai die or something? Wait. Hold on, let me turn off.
Oh, like, do we have any last words? His fucking computer just blue screen. Just, no. You're gonna have none of that shit. Oh my
Well,
god.
but
Yeah, that just summarizes the whole screen right there.
yeah, that's basically that's the video.
That was the true meaning of revolution.
Computer couldn't handle his bad takes. Elbows. Well, James is taking down the Weeb Crew in real time. Oh no, it's like that movie Unfriended. He's a ghost now that's haunting our computers.
Yeah, there's a specter haunting AnyTube.
There's a specter haunting AnyTube. But yes. So I guess look out for that. I should probably also put Gil and I did a review of Godzilla -1. That'll go up on the Patreon tomorrow probably, and then Moomy and I reviewed How Do You Live, also known as The Boy and the Heron.
Y'all live like this.
Y'all live like this. The Boy and the Heroine. That'll probably also go up on Patreon later this week. So check those out. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming out and checking out the stream.
Thanks to Richard and Kai for coming on.
Check out their channels.
Anytime.
They're in the title. You just click their name. They're blue. Just click on them. Just go to their channel.
Shout out. Pour one out for our homie James Somerton. Will he ever come back to the internet? Who knows?
He'll never come back from Silent Hill. Oh, wait, that's James Sunderland. I'm sorry.
And yeah, have a good night, everyone.
Good night.